Chapter 942. Demon Son. Zhao Fu roared as he raised his demon sword, and his eyes gave off an intense blood-red light. Looking at the massive golden lion in front of him, the smile on his face became even more twisted. A wave of demonic chi rushed into the sky, and all of the demonic chi madly gathered, forming a sun that gave off a demonic light. It gave off a heaven-shaking demonic might and seemed to cause the world to tremble in fear. At the same time, Zhao Fu's sword slashed down. The golden lion's expression fell, and it tried to dodge, but a black sword light that seemed to be able to tear apart the heavens sent the golden lion flying back tens of thousands of meters before heavily crashing to the ground. A large crater was smashed open in the ground, and the ground continuously trembled as leaves fell. A long gash appeared on its chest, from which large amounts of golden blood flowed out. The golden lion looked incredibly pained, and this injury was not light at all. Roar! Seeing that its two guardian beasts were not a match for Zhao Fu, the thunder beast furiously roared, and its body exploded out with countless bolts of black lightning. The entire sky seemed to explode, and it gave off a world-destroying aura as it ferociously rushed at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu did not even look back as he stretched out a hand towards the charging thunder beast. The celestial emperor's star in the sky exploded out with a powerful emperor's aura, and boundless golden light covered the world. Zhao Fu's left eye's 5 pupils quickly spun. Clang, 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 the sound of chains could be heard throughout the heavens and earth as golden chains shot out from the sky, the ground, and the surroundings. It was impossible to tell how many there were, perhaps millions or even tens of millions. The thunder beast was given a big fright, and it tried to dodge the countless golden chains. However, there were simply too many of them, and its body was simply too big. It was unable to dodge at all, and its body was bound up by the countless golden chains. Following this, the countless golden chains were bound up. Zhao Fu stretched out his hand and grabbed, and the countless golden chains binding the thunder beast tightened. Roar! The lightning beast felt as if its bones were about to break. It let out a pained and furious roar and released even more black lightning as it struggled madly. On the other side of Zhao Fu, the massive blue eye coldly stared at Zhao Fu. Its pupils constricted and a massive blue aura flame burst forth, which continuously condensed into a massive cyclops. Roar! The cyclops giant gave off a terrifying aura and roared towards the sky, causing the sky to crack. Following this, the cyclops giant leapt into the air and clenched its fists as it descended towards Zhao Fu. At that moment, Zhao Fu raised his head and looked at the giant falling from the sky with his terrifying eyes. He cruelly smiled, and the gray moon-like star in the sky gave off boundless ghostly chi. The 6 blood-red dots in Zhao Fu's right eye started to spin. Suddenly, 6 massive gray orbs appeared beside the falling cyclops giant. These orbs were condensed from ghostly chi and gave off an incredibly cold and eerie aura, making people feel quite dangerous. Facing the 6 gray orbs that suddenly appeared beside it, the cyclops felt quite startled. However, it sensed the danger and its expression fell. Just as it was about to dodge, the 6 gray orbs suddenly exploded, sending out a destructive explosion. From a distance, it looked as if a massive gray orb of light had appeared in the sky, following which a shockwave rippled out. Countless mountains were shaved off, countless trees were uprooted, and massive boulders were blasted apart by this power. After the shockwave rippled out, the cyclops giant collapsed, and the blue flames disappeared, leaving behind the scarred blue eyeball. How can this person be so powerful? Even the 4 of us aren't a match for him. What should we do? The strange bird asked loudly with an unsightly expression. The 4 of them were the guardian beasts of the spirit light world, yet they had been defeated one after another. Their strength was truly terrifying. No wonder the world's consciousness wanted to kill him. Leaving such a person alive would bring about endless trouble in the future. The 4 guardian beasts now understood. The spirit light world is our territory, and everything here is related to us. We can also use the spirit light world's power to the greatest extent, so we can only use that move. We'll use the entire spirit light world as a formation, all living things as a line, and the four of us as the center of the formation to forcefully suppress this person, the Golden Lion roared. After suffering from Zhao Fu's attack, he clearly understood how powerful Zhao Fu was. If they did not do this, they definitely would not be a match for this person, and the spirit light world might even be destroyed by him. The other three guardian beasts did not hesitate and followed the Golden Lion's method. After all, they had suffered greatly at Zhao Fu's hands. Wu. Divine Gold Lion, in the name of the spirit light world's guardian beast, all living things in the spirit light world listen to my commands. Wu. Dark Lightning Divine Beast, in the name of the spirit light world's guardian beast, all living things in the spirit light world listen to my commands. Wu. The Heavenly Sage Eyes, in the name of the spirit light world's guardian beasts, commands all living things in the spirit light world. Wu. The Mystic Purple Devil Bird, in the name of the spirit light world's guardian beasts, commands all living things in the spirit light world. The four guardian beasts raised their heads to the sky and roared, shaking the heavens. This time, they exploded out with their full power. Ferocious aura flames flowed out of their bodies, and an even more shocking power flowed out of their bodies. The Dark Lightning Divine Beast, which had been bound by Zhao Fu, broke free from the countless chains, and the four guardian beasts rushed into the sky. A terrifying aura flame surrounded Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu instinctively sensed the danger, and just as he was about to act, a massive rainbow-colored ring of light formed around the four guardian beasts, and Zhao Fu, who was at the center, felt a powerful force locking him down. However, this energy was not very strong, and Zhao Fu vigorously struggled. If he had some time, he would have been able to break free. However, the four guardian beasts evidently did not give Zhao Fu such an opportunity. After the ring of light formed, a massive formless energy instantly spread throughout the entire world. Whether it was the mountains, rivers, grass, or trees, they all resonated with each other, giving off traces of aura and linking together. A massive heaven and earth magic formation gradually appeared. It was a shocking formation formed by the entire spirit light world. Heaven and earth spirits and the power of all creatures madly gathered at the center of the formation, and Zhao Fu immediately felt a massive power locking him down. This power was more than 100 times stronger than before, making it so that he could not move at all. This power was incredibly powerful. Seeing that Zhao Fu was bound and could not move at all, the four guardian beasts smiled and felt much more at ease. Should we seal him in the depths of the spirit light world, or should we use the magic formation to kill him? The Golden Lion asked the other three guardian beasts. Of course we should kill him. How could we dare to keep such a person alive? If we seal him now and break the seal in the future, what will we do? He's simply too much of a threat, the lightning beast replied, filled with killing intent. The other two guardian beasts nodded. They definitely could not let Zhao Fu live. Boom! The four guardian beasts made their decision to kill Zhao Fu. They activated the magic formation, and a wave of energy blasted towards Zhao Fu at the center of the formation. Pooh! Zhao Fu coughed up a mouthful of gray-black blood, and his clothes were reduced to dust, revealing Zhao Fu's true appearance, as well as his slender upper body. Looking at Zhao Fu's appearance, the four guardian beasts felt quite surprised. They had never thought that Zhao Fu would be so young and handsome. That noble and domineering emperor's aura was quite enchanting, but this did not change the four guardian beasts' decision to kill Zhao Fu. They continued to activate the heaven and earth magic formation. The heaven and earth gave off a mighty power as it slowly spun. At the center of the formation, Zhao Fu felt as if he was being grinded by a massive millstone, and it was incredibly painful. Gray-black blood leaked out of Zhao Fu's upper body. Arg! Zhao Fu howled in pain as more and more blood flowed out of his body. Under the power of the heaven and earth formation, Zhao Fu's bones started to twist and fall out of place, making him look quite wretched. The 4 guardian beasts did not feel any pity, and instead looked delighted. The lightning beast called out, "We're just a step away from killing him. Let's activate the heaven and earth formation." Boom! The 4 guardian beasts exploded out with terrifying power, activating the heaven and earth formation. Affected by this power, the slowly spinning heaven and earth formation quickly spun, and all of the power in the world ferociously gathered before once again blasting towards Zhao Fu. Arg! A mournful howl tore through the sky and shook the surroundings. Zhao Fu's body was locked in the air by the formation, and he roared in pain. He felt as if his body and soul were being grinded apart, and this pain stabbed into the depths of Zhao Fu's heart like a sharp knife. At that moment, something seemed to shatter as the 3 massive stars in the sky exploded out with a heaven-toppling aura. Countless rays of light exploded out, destroying all things, causing the weather to change and clouds to become chaotic as all creatures felt terror. Boom! 3 pillars of light shot out from the 3 stars and simultaneously landed on Zhao Fu's body. The 4 guardian beasts had never thought that this attack would not be able to kill Zhao Fu, and they once again exploded out with terrifying power as they desperately activated the heaven and earth formation, vowing to kill Zhao Fu. The massive heaven and earth formation quickly spun, and it was impossible to see it with the naked eye. An even more ferocious power blasted towards Zhao Fu like an ocean. Arg! Within the pillar of light, Zhao Fu raised his head to the sky and howled even more painfully as black blood continuously flowed out of his eyes. In that moment, Zhao Fu's pupils seemed to split open from the center. The heavens and earth suddenly fell silent as if everything in the world had been locked down by some sort of power. The 4 guardian beasts were horrified to find that they were unable to activate the heaven and earth formation, and what made them even more terrified was that they could sense an unavoidable danger descending. Boom! An explosion sounded out as a terrifying world-destroying power spread out with Zhao Fu at the center. In just an instant, the heavens and earth started to collapse. Space and time became chaotic, and laws were shattered. Everything was destroyed and all life was extinguished. Chapter 943. The ground continuously trembled and countless cracks appeared in the sky. A berserk gale blew and lightning flashed, causing the heavens and earth to darken. Countless creatures instinctively wanted to run for their lives, but they found that there was nowhere to run. They could only howl in terror and despair, looking incredibly pitiful. At this moment, the source energy of all things in the world gathered in one place, and all of the Feybright players were forced to retreat. The boundless spirit light source energy continuously gathered, forming a hazy person. This person's appearance was indistinguishable, and it was impossible to tell if he was male or female, old or young. He gave off an incredibly powerful might and an aura that could cause all creatures to kneel. He was as powerful as a world. This was the manifestation of the world's consciousness, and the hazy person was the spirit light world's consciousness. It would only appear when the world was in danger, and now, Zhao Fu's power that could destroy everything forced the world's consciousness to personally descend. Seeing Zhao Fu continuously howl within the pillar of light and the scene of the heavens and earth collapsing, the world's consciousness did not hesitate to act. Boom! 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 Shocking explosions continuously sounded throughout the entire world as a terrifying battle erupted, causing the heavens and earth to fall into darkness. Many players who had left the Heaven Awakened world looked incredibly terrified. Even though they had left the Heaven Awakened world, that feeling of terror and despair still lingered in their hearts, causing their bodies to feel a chill. A few days later, they were finally able to enter the Heaven Awakened world. The spirit light world was in quite a wretched state. Countless trees had been destroyed and rocks were everywhere, and there was still a terrifying aura lingering on the ground. Some people could not help but look towards the center of the battle, and the scene was incredibly shocking and terrifying. The sky was covered by a thick layer of dark clouds, and 1,000 or so regions had been turned into scorched earth. There were traces of black aura, and there were no signs of life. Some places had collapsed into deep chasms, some had cracked open into canyons, and some had lava flowing out. It was a scene of doomsday. It could be imagined just how terrifying that battle had been. It had destroyed everything, and no one had been able to survive, dying like ants in despair. Luckily, the spirit light world had won in the end, or else the consequences would have been quite severe. However, that person had been able to fight against the spirit light world's consciousness. Just what kind of existence was he? Following this, Legatee Chin's name resounded throughout the entire spirit light world. It was the first time everyone had heard of this name, and they felt a chill towards his power. His power evidently surpassed anything that the spirit light people knew. Even though he had been forced back by the world's consciousness, he had heavily injured the 4 guardian beasts. As the world protector, Cayman had run away quickly, or else he would have long since died. However, he was also heavily injured, and the other world protectors were the same. Most importantly, that person caused countless creatures in the thousands of regions to die. It was impossible to count just how many people there were, and countless cries of despair could be heard in that region. The most important person in this battle had already returned to Qin, and this was mainly because of the Golden Dragon. Without it, Zhao Fu's consciousness would have completely fallen, and he would have stayed there to fight to the death with the spirit light world's consciousness. After returning to Qin, Zhao Fu was covered with wounds and his aura was quite weak. He was on the verge of death. Luckily, he had already given the revival pill to the Imperial Physician Pavilion, and Zhao Fu ordered people to use the revival pill, causing Zhao Fu's injuries to quickly recover. Moreover, the Emperor Phoenix statue sent a large amount of Phoenix Qi into Zhao Fu's body, causing its recovery effects to be quite powerful. It was only slightly weaker than the revival pill. Finally, with the Flower Fairy's healing, Zhao Fu regained consciousness in just a few days, and his aura was quite weak. Now, Zhao Fu had returned to his original appearance, and his eyes had also returned to their original state. His cracked eyes had also closed. Zhao Fu could not remember what had happened, because when his body had been pinned to the cliff, Zhao Fu's consciousness had been dragged into boundless darkness. His body had been completely controlled by his bloodline, and that state was dominated by the Death Race's bloodline. That was why Zhao Fu had lost all of his life force. After all, the Death Race was a creature of the undead, and Zhao Fu's Death Race bloodline was undoubtedly one of the top-tier bloodlines within the Death Race. Because he was dominated by the Death Race's bloodline, his 3 fate stars sensed immense danger and broke free from Zhao Fu's control, exploding out with immense power. The demon god's nature that had fused into his soul started to affect his body, causing this power to become pure destructive power. Now, Zhao Fu leaned against the bed and ate some medicinal pills as he listened to the Golden Dragon describe what had happened. The final state, in which all of Zhao Fu's eyes had cracked open, was because Zhao Fu had broken through the life restriction and entered the Dao-I state. All living creatures had life restrictions. For example, it determined a person's lifespan, the innate attributes of different races, and how good or bad one's innate talent was. These were all life restrictions because it determined how long one could live and how long one's lifespan was. It determined what innate talent one had. Even though these things could be changed through external forces, such as eating medicinal pills that increased one's lifespan or spirit medicines that increased one's talent, these were only changes and could not be broken through. Now that Zhao Fu had completely broken through the life restriction, his future evolution would no longer be restricted. He could become a god or a demon, and he might not even be able to maintain his human form and become a monster. After all, once the life restriction was broken, everything would lose its restrictions, and the direction of his evolution would be completely unknown. There was also the Dao-I state. The Dao-I gave him the power that was closest to the Dao after breaking through the life restriction. It gave him the power to see through the source of all matter, and all illusions were useless against the Tao I. The Tao I was given after breaking through the life restriction, so this state was called the Tao I state. This time, Zhao Fu had never thought that such a thing would happen. What made Zhao Fu the most angry was that he could not use the world's energy and had been completely suppressed by the 9 of them. Otherwise, with the world's energy, even if Zhao Fu could not defeat the 9 of them, he would be able to escape. The reason why he could not use the world's consciousness had been reported to Zhao Fu by Flower Moon's people, and they had even made a list of people. It could be said that he had been heavily injured because of the people on the list. Zhao Fu coldly harumphed. He had to kill these people in the future, and he would not accept even if they surrendered. Chapter 944. The primogenitor statue was an incredibly important item to the spirit light race, and it was incredibly powerful, surpassing what people could imagine. It indeed had the ability to help the spirit light race reach glory, and it was the greatest help to them. This showed just how important it was. The primogenitor statue was a supreme treasure that had been nurtured by the spirit light world, and it was formed by the primogenitor of the spirit light race. It was said that the primogenitor of the spirit light race could create all things in the world, and it was on the same level as the god of creation. For example, China had legends of Pangu splitting the heavens and earth, and the West had legends of God creating the human world. The primogenitor was in existence on the same level as them, which showed just how powerful the primogenitor was. However, compared to China's legends, the primogenitor of the spirit light world truly existed. His body had been turned into a statue, and it had become a supreme treasure of the spirit light race. The first effect was that it could greatly increase the spirit light race's power. This was bloodline power, which meant that the primogenitor statue could increase one's bloodline power and innate attributes, making one's overall power more powerful. Most importantly, the primogenitor statue did not have any restrictions, which meant that it did not increase the power of a few 100 million or even billions of people but the power of the entire spirit light race. In other words, this statue could increase the power of an entire world, which was something very rare. Moreover, the increase in power was very great, allowing the spirit light race's innate attributes to reach stage 0 to 9. In other words, even if they did not do anything, they would be at stage 0 to 9 from birth, and they would not have to bitterly cultivate like others. As such, the primogenitor statue was incredibly important to the spirit light race. With it, the spirit light race's power would surpass that of the previous world. Apart from the first ability, there was also a second ability, which was to forcefully gather heaven and earth spirit chi. It did not gather its own world's spirit chi but forcefully absorb other worlds' spirit chi into its own world. This way, the spirit light world's spirit chi would become more and more abundant, and their cultivation speed would become faster and faster. However, the surrounding spirit chi would become scarcer and scarcer, and their cultivation speed would become slower and slower. There was also a third ability. Because the primogenitor statue controlled creation power, its power was naturally quite terrifying. The third ability was that it had a primogenitor domain, and spirit light people who cultivated within it could comprehend high-grade power. The fourth ability was the primogenitor statue's terrifying power. Even though the spirit light world's primogenitor had died and become a statue, it was still more powerful than the 8 aquatic beast kings combined. If it unleashed all of its power, it would be a world-destroying war machine. With these 4 abilities, if the spirit light race obtained them, they would definitely walk towards glory, making others feel incredibly envious of them. However, the primogenitor statue could only be used by the spirit light race. In other words, even though Zhao Fu had obtained the primogenitor statue, he could not use it, which made him feel quite pained. The only thing he could use was to suppress the spirit light race. The primogenitor statue was the manifestation of the spirit light race's primogenitor, and it was incredibly important to the spirit light race. Its attributes could give the spirit light race many benefits, but in the hands of others, it could also be used to suppress the spirit light race. For example, Zhao Fu had obtained a reversal talisman that could change an attribute to the opposite attribute. If he changed the primogenitor statue's attributes, it would become a killing weapon that countered the spirit light race. It was an unavoidable suppression, as it came from the bloodline. If Zhao Fu changed the primogenitor statue's attributes and released it on the battlefield, all of the spirit light people's power would be reduced by 60%. In other words, he would have stage 1 strength, but when facing the primogenitor statue, his power would be reduced by 60%, and he would only have stage 0 to 4 strength. A stage 0 to 4 soldier would be able to easily kill 10 or so stage 1 soldiers, and killing dozens of stage 1 soldiers would not be a problem. If their power was reduced by so much, how great would their advantage be? Qin could fight 40 to 50 of them by himself, and if he sent out 1 billion soldiers, they would need 40 to 50 billion soldiers to defend. With the primogenitor statue, it would be quite easy to deal with the spirit light race. As such, the world's consciousness did not want this item to fall into the hands of others, as it countered the spirit light race too much. With this item, it would be incredibly easy for Qin to destroy the spirit light world in the future. Moreover, the primogenitor statue could not be used by others and could only be used to suppress the spirit light race. However, Qin had the heaven and earth refining formation, so perhaps he could refine it and add the 4 attributes to Qin. That way, Qin would be able to replace the spirit light race and reach glory. This idea was quite tempting and even exciting, as the 4 attributes were quite powerful. The Golden Dragon was quite knowledgeable about this, and Zhao Fu immediately asked him what he should do. It was evident that ordinary refining methods would not work. The Golden Dragon did not hide anything and explained everything to Zhao Fu in detail. After listening, Zhao Fu found that even though he could refine the primogenitor statue, it was incredibly difficult, much more difficult than refining a nation armament. This was because a nation armament was a condensation of fate, and fate could change and fuse. For example, if a nation devoured another nation to form a new nation, the fate would fuse together. If a nation split into 2 nations, they would become 2 different fates. As such, by using another nation's fate and Qin's fate, one could refine another nation's nation armament for Qin's use. However, the primogenitor statue was different, as the core of the primogenitor statue was the bloodline. Zhao Fu did not have the spirit light race's bloodline, so he naturally could not use it. The Golden Dragon's method was to change the bloodline and fuse Qin's bloodline into it. This process was incredibly difficult, as the primogenitor statue contained the primogenitor bloodline. If he wanted to replace it, he would have to gather all of Qin's bloodlines and fuse them into a new bloodline. Only then would it be able to replace the primogenitor bloodline. Moreover, this method had many uncertainties. Perhaps the primogenitor statue would be damaged, lose its stats, or become even more powerful. The most important thing was time. Qin had 5 billion or so people, so it would take 600 years to completely refine the primogenitor statue. This was because the primogenitor statue had been nourished by the primogenitor bloodline for thousands of years, and it could not be changed in a short period of time. There was a way to speed up this process, which was to gather more people. With more people, they would be able to gather more bloodlines, and the bloodline would become more powerful. That way, the speed at which the primogenitor statue could replace the primogenitor bloodline would be faster. Otherwise, if they waited 600 years, Zhao Fu did not know if he would be able to live that long, so he could only leave it to his descendants. Chapter 945. Zhao Fu first ordered people to dig a massive, rectangular blood pond that was at least 100,000 meters long. This was because the primogenitor statue was 100,000 meters tall, and it was 10 times larger than the aquatic beast king. After digging the blood pond, It was time to collect all of Qin Kingdom's bloodlines, regardless of race or status. Because there were so many people, this was not something that could be done in a short period of time. During this period of time, Zhao Fu took the primogenitor statue to the heaven and earth refining formation. What Zhao Fu needed to do was leave a blood law seal on the primogenitor statue. This was to use Zhao Fu's blood to carve a blood law seal on the primogenitor statue. The countless bloodlines in Qin Kingdom would use Zhao Fu's bloodline as the core, forming a new bloodline. The primogenitor statue would be replaced by this bloodline, and Zhao Fu would naturally be able to control the primogenitor statue. Moreover, the benefit of carving a blood law seal was that he could directly release the primogenitor statue into the blood pond. As long as he poured out some blood every day, the blood pond would not decrease, and the blood law seal would be able to refine the primogenitor statue. That way, he would not have to keep using up the heaven and earth refining formation, as there were many things that the heaven and earth refining formation needed to do. Zhao Fu placed the palm-sized primogenitor statue on the heaven and earth refining formation and activated it. An intense light spread out as a formless energy covered the primogenitor statue in the air. Zhao Fu cut open his palm and forced out the purest essence blood in his body. Zhao Fu's blood became blood red with a trace of gold, and under Zhao Fu's control, it flew towards the magic formation. As the blood entered the magic formation, it turned into a blood-red mist and fused into the magic formation. The heaven and earth refining formation on the altar started to spin and give off boundless blood-red light. The primogenitor statue in the air was covered by a blood-red light, and the blood-red light started to seep into the statue. The primogenitor statue gradually gave off a blood-red light, and a blood-red magic formation similar to the heaven and earth refining formation appeared on the primogenitor statue's forehead. With the appearance of this blood-red magic design, the heaven and earth magic design slowly stopped operating. The matter of drawing the blood magic seal was finally completed. Now all that was left was to wait. A few days later, the massive blood pool was dug up and the blood was poured into it. Zhao Fu returned the primogenitor statue to its original size and placed it in the blood pool, completing the refining of the primogenitor statue. Right now, the most important thing was to obtain more people so that they could refine the primogenitors faster. Zhao Fu did not want to wait 600 years. 15 days had passed in the real world, meaning that the real world would be devoured in 15 days. During this time, Zhao Fu continued to order Qin's soldiers to clean up the area and build the Great Wall. Originally, Zhao Fu did not want to attack the other areas, because the situation in the north had not stabilized and the defensive measures had not been completed. Attacking the other areas would be unwise, but now the situation had changed. Within a hidden room, Zhao Fu sat on a chair while a man with a Japanese accent knelt below him. He was very respectful and humble, and he told Zhao Fu about some things. Zhao Fu listened attentively and thought to himself. By now, Qin was clearing out the region and stabilizing the situation in the north. The other areas of the Midland continent were also building defensive measures, and in order to defend themselves, no one underestimated Qin at all. There were 4 defensive measures in total. The first was an isolation formation, which was a void zone that was 10 regions wide. Without using any other methods, it would take an army at least a year to travel through. The second was a spatial restriction formation, which prevented anything that could fly from appearing in the sky. The various countries had invested a lot in this area, and even tens of thousands of city lords would not be able to break through the spatial restriction formation in order to prevent Qin from attacking them. The third was an underground formation. After learning their lesson from last time, the various factions had also taken precautions to prevent Qin from digging tunnels and silently entering their territory. The fourth was the Great Wall, where the final battle would take place. They had also set up countless restrictions here, as well as defensive measures. If the first 3 defensive measures failed, They would have to fight with Qin in the final battle, and victory would be decided in that battle. The defenses in the sky, on the ground, underground, and at the Great Wall were incredibly comprehensive, and they gave off an indestructible aura that could deal with Qin's ferocious attack. However, this time they were going to lose because of the will of the people. This was the purpose of this meeting. The person who spoke was a Japanese ambassador, who represented 70% of the top-tier factions in Japan. They were willing to submit to Qin and secretly open a path for Qin to unify the eastern side of the Midland continent. Why are you doing this? What do you want? Zhao Fu sat on a chair and asked in a dignified voice. Everything had a purpose, and 70% of the top-tier factions in Japan were willing to submit to Qin. This was not a small matter, and they were not stupid. They definitely had their own motives. The ambassador knelt on the ground and lowered his head as he replied respectfully and sincerely, "Your Majesty Qin, no one can stop you from unifying the world. Now, no one can stop you from unifying the world, and the world will be yours sooner or later. We're willing to submit to Great Qin because we're forsaking the darkness for the light, and we're doing this out of consideration for Japan's commoners. We're looking for a wise ruler, and under your leadership, the commoners will be able to live in peace and happiness." Hearing this ambassador's words, Zhao Fu could not help but lightly laugh. Before, those people had said that Qin was evil and belonged to the dark side, and they had said that he was cruel, cold-blooded, and licentious. Now, they were saying that he had abandoned the dark side for the light, and he had become a wise ruler who was loved and respected by the people. However, Zhao Fu also understood the Japanese people's characters. Because of the lack of resources, the concept of survival of the fittest was deeply implanted in their minds. They treated those who were weaker than them as ferocious and perverted people, and those who were stronger than them were loyal dogs who liked to submit to the strong. Now that the real world was about to be destroyed, they understood that no matter how good their defenses were, they would not be able to stop Qin, so they came to pledge their loyalty. Their request was very simple. They wanted their families and legacies to be preserved. In the future, the Japanese people would become Qin's people and enjoy the same treatment as ordinary people, and they hoped that they would not become untouchables. Back then, the four countries had fiercely resisted, and because Zhao Fu had lost many people, he had angrily classified all of the players in the four countries as untouchables, and they had to work for Qin in order to become stronger. He had never thought that it would still be effective, and they could even threaten people to surrender. This matter was quite important, and Zhao Fu did not easily believe him. He only truly believed him after making sure that the information was accurate. With their betrayal, Qin would be able to take over the entire East, which was incredibly beneficial. As such, Zhao Fu nodded and agreed to the Japanese people's request. Chapter 946. To the east of China there were 6 countries: North Korea, Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Although there were many countries, none of them were very strong. They were all relatively weak, and had almost no resistance. The closest country to Qin was Indonesia, with 250 regions and 50 million people. Malaysia had 200 regions and 40 million people. Country F had 350 regions and 80 million people. Japan had 300 regions and 100 million people. Korea had 200 regions and 40 million people, and North Korea had 150 regions and 30 million people. In total, the 6 countries had 1,450 regions and 340 million people. Out of the 6 countries, there were only 4 nation armaments, and each of them came from one of the 4 countries. In Nepal, with the development of primitive social productivity, the development of transportation and trade in the South Sea, the increase of Indians coming and going to the archipelago, and the introduction of Indian culture, the earliest slave state, Yetyao, appeared in the second half of the 2nd century BC. Yetyao was located at the border of the Eastern Han Dynasty, where Indonesia is today. In the 6th year of Yongjian of the Eastern Han Dynasty, 131 AD, an envoy was sent to China to establish friendly relations. Malaysia. Bagni was the most prosperous country in Malaysia. In the 13th century, Bagni had 14 states. The capital had 10,000 people. At this time, it had entered a slave society, and the class difference was obvious. The economy was mainly agriculture. It produced camphor. The people boiled the sea for salt and brewed camphor for wine. In the 14th century, the people of Bagni worshipped Buddha. The central government appointed a minister to manage the country's finances and taxes. At the end of the 14th century, it belonged to Malacca. At the beginning of the 15th century, it belonged to the Malacca Kingdom. At the same time, it started to assimilate. Soon, it regained its independence and established a sultanate. At the beginning of the 16th century, the 5th Sultan Bolkiah was in power. Other than most of Kalimantan, some islands in the south of the Philippines also belonged to Bagni. Historians called this period the Golden Age of Brunei's history. At the end of the 16th century, due to internal strife in the royal family, the Western colonists took the opportunity to invade. In 1888, it became a protectorate of the Eagle Kingdom. Country F. Barangay Union. The second group of Malaysians came to the archipelago by boat, called barangay by the locals. The settlement they established was called barangay. Barangay was the basic social organization of ancient Country F. Each barangay consisted of 30 to 100 households with varying numbers of people. The leader was called Datu or Rab. Barangay society consisted of 3 basic classes: nobles, freemen, and slaves. Due to the needs of production and war, the barangays gradually formed the Barangay Confederacy, which was the earliest form of slavery. Nation was a special country because it had only had one country in its history. It had never established any other countries. It had always implemented a monarchical system. Although the regime had been overthrown many times and power had fallen into the hands of others, the monarch had always existed and had never been abolished. Ever since the first heavenly emperor, Shenwu Heavenly Emperor, ascended the throne in 660 BC and continued to this day, it could be said to be a miracle. Its nation armament was quite unique as well. Not only did it look like a nation armament, it also looked like a fated kin's divine armament. It was something that was in between the two, and it was a combination. In other words, it had many of them: the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, the Yasakani no Magatama, and the Yata no Kata mirror. The 4 countries all had their own nation armament. Finally, South Korea and North Korea had been one country in history, but they had split into 2 in recent times. This was because their regions were small and did not have much fate, and after splitting, they were unable to condense a nation armament. There were 1,450 regions and 340 million players in total, and in Zhao Fu's eyes, they were not even worth mentioning. In the face of death and entering the heaven-awakened world, they would all kneel and submit to Qin. It was the same for the 4 countries before, as it was better to live than to die. This time, Zhao Fu's main target was the system factions. There were 1,450 regions, 4,500 city lords, and 450 million soldiers. However, not all of their soldiers were gathered together, and there were some city lords who remained neutral. Zhao Fu's plan was to take down the 6 countries as quickly as possible before attacking China from behind and destroying the 2,000 regions to the east of China as quickly as possible. The eastern factions had 2,000 regions, and there were 6,000 or so city lords and 600 million stage 1 soldiers. However, they were scattered in different places, and some chose to defend against Qin with the players while others chose not to participate. As such, they were not truly united. If they took down the eastern side, Qin would be able to unify the eastern and northern sides. That way, there would be no one left to fear. The eastern side of the Midland continent had 3,450 regions in total, and to devour so many regions at once, Zhao Fu's appetite would be incredibly big. Zhao Fu first gathered his subordinates to discuss this matter. If they succeeded, Qin would only be halfway to unifying the Midland continent, and the other half would be completed very quickly. After unifying the Midland continent, Qin would start to make a move on the other continent. The eastern side's factions could finally relax after setting up 4 layers of defenses. They had completely locked down the sky, ground, and underground, and no matter how powerful Great Qin was, it would not be able to break through their defenses. They were quite confident in this. This was because Qin had lost to this method twice before, but the second time was by digging tunnels. Now that they had set up defenses underground and in the sky, it was almost impossible for Qin to find a way to break through. What they needed to do now was to send people to stand guard here, as they could not have so many people staying here all the time. As long as they notified them when Qin attacked, they would have enough time to rush over. Moreover, everyone knew that Qin was clearing out regions and building the Great Wall. The situation in the north had not stabilized yet, so it was almost impossible for him to suddenly attack. It was currently the end of summer, and a bright moon gave off pure moonlight, illuminating the dark blue night sky. There were also a few stars around it. "Brother, do you think we can stop Qin? Qin's rise is simply too fast, and the real world is about to be destroyed. If we die, we'll really die, and we don't know what to do in the future." A few people stood on the Great Wall, and one of them felt quite worried as he said to the person next to him. He felt quite lost and helpless about the future. The bearded man smiled as he replied, "Of course we can stop him. Do you think that we'll be destroyed by Qin? We're an alliance of 6 countries. Last time, Qin was lucky to dig tunnels, but now we've completely set up defenses." Chapter 947. It's impossible for Qin to break through. I'm quite confident in that. However, we can't control the future, so we can only take things one step at a time. However, I definitely won't submit to Qin. He's not a good person, and he's a Chinese kingdom. Hearing this, the person who had asked the question nodded and said, "Qin is indeed not a good person, and I heard that he made people peasants. He's incredibly despicable. Now, our defenses are like a firm fortress, and we don't have to fear Qin. Our kingdoms are also actively cooperating with other continents, and I believe that we have the power to stop Qin." At that moment, another person said, "I don't know how Qin developed so quickly. That Qin's legatee seems to have cheated and instantly unified the northern side of the Midland continent. He's incredibly dangerous, and only by uniting together can we stop him. It would be great if we had the strength to destroy Qin now." Another person could not help but laugh as he said, "If we had the strength to attack Qin's palace, we would be able to take all the treasures and beauties that Qin's legatee has collected. If we brought back any one of them, we would feel that our lives were worth it." Hearing his words, everyone else started to laugh. Within the darkness, a group of Japanese players led Great Qin's 15,000 or so city lords and stealthily passed through the 4 defensive lines. Because Japan had put in a lot of effort into the 4 defensive lines, they had left behind secret passages that Great Qin could use to silently pass through. After entering, 100 or so Japanese players were already waiting. They were the leaders of top-tier factions in Japan, and seeing Zhao Fu, they all knelt with their heads almost touching the ground. They were incredibly respectful and called out in unison, "We greet your Majesty." The Japanese players could be praised for this. The other factions that had been conquered by Qin had never been so respectful. Zhao Fu gave a trace of a smile as he said, "You may rise." The Japanese players all got up, and a white-haired elder gave a flattering smile as he said, "It's our honor to be able to see you, Your Majesty. No matter what Your Majesty wants us to do, we will be loyal to Your Majesty to the death." Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he said, "When Qin attacks, you can attack the other countries. If you can make contributions, we will greatly reward you." The elder and the others all smiled and bowed in gratitude, looking like slaves. Following this, Qin also started to act. They first attacked the 6 countries, but they still had not noticed that Qin had already entered. Qin could use a sneak attack to destroy the 6 countries and break through their defenses, allowing a large number of Qin's armies to enter. Following this, they would attack the eastern side of China from the rear. Even though the eastern side of China still had some defenses, they were the same ones that had been set up to defend against the eastern side of China. Now that their attention was focused on Great Qin, all of their defenses were focused on defending against Great Qin, and they had no ability to defend against the eastern side. Now that they had reached an agreement with the other countries to resist Qin, they would not set up defenses here, making things easier for Qin. The 6 countries had 1,450 regions in total, so they had 4,500 or so city lords. Qin had 15,000 or so city lords, as well as 8 aquatic beast kings. Moreover, Zhao Fu had not sent out his full army yet, and he had left many people to defend against attacks from the other side. The system factions were the greatest obstacle, so Zhao Fu ordered the 15,000 city lords to spread out and go to the side of the system factions. They would then wait for an opportunity to attack together. Of the 4 countries' nation armaments, Zhao Mo and Elise could deal with 2, while Bai Qi and the others could deal with 1, while Zhao Fu could choose 1. The 8 aquatic beast kings were massive and suited for causing chaos, making it easier for Qin to take down the 6 countries. Deep into the night, everything fell into a deep slumber. A miserable cry resounded through the night sky, and then flames soared into the sky. Screams and cries pierced the ears as countless people fled for their lives or did their best to resist. The 6 nations fell into chaos. Qin's attacking the 6 countries. This news spread out, shaking the entire world. Countless people were woken up from their sleep, and after hearing about this, their expressions fell. They had never thought that Qin would suddenly attack at such a time. Moreover, he was not attacking one by one but the 6 countries at the same time. Qin Zhao's people's expressions were quite unsightly, and they could not understand why such a comprehensive defense was useless against Qin. However, if it really was useless, then attacking the Midland continent would be more appropriate, as Qin's legatee hated them the most. Following this, they heard that when Great Qin attacked the other 6 countries, a large portion of Japan's forces did not resist and instead helped Great Qin attack the other countries. They were simply taking the side of the evildoer. Japan's abnormal actions allowed Qin Zhao's people to understand what was going on. It was not that the 4 defensive lines were useless but that a traitor had appeared. Now that they realized Qin's goal, they immediately cried out in terror, "Hurry and defend the eastern side." Countless factions found out what Qin's goal was, and the entire eastern side of China fell into panic. Countless factions quickly gathered towards the eastern side. The 8 aquatic beast kings rampaged through the 6 countries' territories, once again unrestrainedly destroying and slaughtering those who were terrified. The 4 defensive lines had already been destroyed, and Qin's army used countless teleportation channels to quickly arrive within the 6 countries' territories. They then rode their armored cavalry and charged in all directions, starting to attack. Qin Zhao's sudden attack dealt a heavy blow to the 6 countries' system factions. Under the attack of Qin's 15,000 or so city lords, 1,500 of the 4,500 or so city lords died, and the rest were forced to submit under Qin Zhao's ferocious might. Now, even the countless player factions were in chaos and were unable to put up any effective resistance. They did not have enough strength either. Elsewhere, Zhao Mo turned into a 100-meter-tall demon sovereign king, and his claws gave off ferocious demonic qi as he killed Yi Tiaogua's legatee. His nation armament and city lord seal powerlessly fell to the ground. Roar! A pained and unwilling dragon's roar sounded throughout the eastern side of the Midland continent. A massive violet dragon struggled in pain and gradually collapsed, turning into countless traces of violet chi before disappearing. Following this, a system announcement sounded out in the minds of the Indonesian players. All of Indonesia's territory had been conquered by Qin. Indonesia had perished, and all of its fate had been absorbed by Qin. Now, all of the Indonesian players fell into despair. Their minds were completely blank, and they did not know what to do. If Indonesia was destroyed, what could they do? It was evident that they could not stop Great Qin. Were they going to die at Great Qin's hands? Chapter 948. At this time, a voice sounded like the sound of nature, like a ray of light in the endless darkness, comforting their fragile and afraid souls. His Majesty, the King of Qin, has ordered that those who surrender to Qin now can directly become his people. If you follow him to attack Huaxia, Qin will not turn you into your real bodies. You just need to attack Huaxia desperately. After the real world is destroyed, you will be rewarded according to your contributions. In the future, you will all be meritorious people. Qin himself had mastered the method of turning a large number of real bodies. Now they could either choose to surrender or to die. There must be a small number of people who chose to die. When they heard that they would not be pariahs and would be given preferential treatment for meritorious deeds, they did not hesitate much, because they had no other choice. I join Qin and am willing to serve Qin. One person shouted, and the others also responded. They did not seem to resist Qin at all. Now they had already regarded themselves as Qin's people. Zhao Fu wanted to deal with the attack on the east of Huaxia. They learned that Qin was attacking the 6 countries, and countless forces were coming to the east. If they gathered too many people and formed a strong direction, Qin's plan to attack the east of Huaxia would fail. Therefore, they temporarily changed their plan and used the 6 countries to attack Huaxia together. This relationship was a little strange. The 6 countries were originally foreign countries, but they attacked Huaxia under Qin's order, while Qin belonged to Huaxia. Now only the R nation had not been destroyed, but most of its people had surrendered and followed others to attack Huaxia. The 6 countries gathered into 6 teams and fiercely attacked the east of Huaxia, as if they did not care about their lives. Because Qin would reward them according to their contributions, they would not really die at this time. It was the best time to take this opportunity to make meritorious deeds for Qin. If they wanted to make meritorious deeds in the future, they would really have to risk their lives. The forces in the east of Huaxia had not gathered many people at all. They did not expect that the countries that had just been defeated by Qin would all surrender so cowardly and listen to Qin's order to attack Huaxia. When the 2 sides were fighting, the Huaxia side angrily scolded the 6 countries for being spineless and the most shameless and despicable. Just a moment ago, they had been cooperating with each other and acted as if they were brothers. Now, they were attacking the Huaxia side desperately. They were acting as executioners for Qin and slaughtering people for Qin. Now that the 6 countries had surrendered to Qin, they would definitely speak for Qin. They retorted loudly and forcefully, "We are loyal to a wise ruler. Qin's prince is the rightful ruler, and Qin is blessed by the heavens. He will unify the Middle-earth continent in the end. We are also following the will of the heavens. Now we will suppress you rebels and get rid of you scourges for Qin." Both sides were locked in a fierce battle, but the 6 nations had a great advantage in terms of numbers. This was because they were close by and could directly launch an attack, while the defending factions were only from the eastern side of China. The other factions had not yet arrived. Secondly, the defensive measures were not complete, so they were unable to form a powerful defense. The third point was their will to fight. Their kingdoms had already been destroyed, so they had no other choice but to serve Great Qin. If they could make great contributions without dying, they would not have to worry in the future. However, how could the Chinese side have the will to fight to the death? The last emperor of Japan was not willing to submit to Qin, and he was personally killed by Zhao Fu. Japan's 3 divine weapons, the Kusanagi no Magatama, and the Yata no Kagami mirror, had fallen into Zhao Fu's hands. The reason why Japan had not been destroyed yet was because there was still a faction that had not been destroyed. This faction was called the Knight of 100 Ghosts, and it was the faction that Masanori Hanno had established. Zhao Fu gave off a terrifying aura as he stood above the Devil City. As the legatee, Masanori Hanno definitely had great power. Zhao Fu was the world protector, and she was the legatee. Both of them could use the human world's power, and they were the protectors of the world. However, in the current situation, they could not use the world's power. Masanori Hanno stood in the sky and looked at Zhao Fu with a complicated gaze. Behind her stood 3 people giving off massive amounts of devil chi. The first had 2 horns and carried a jug of wine on his back. He was incredibly handsome, and he was Shutenduji. The second wore armor and had crow wings. He had a long nose and a savage expression, and he was Daitengu. The third was an incredibly enchanting beauty with 9 tails, and she was Tamamo no Me. These 3 devils were the 3 most famous devils in Japan, and they were the 3 most powerful devils. There were all sorts of legends about them, and they were led by Shutenduji. Looking at Masanori Hanno, Zhao Fu's attitude became much better because he had a good impression of her. He said softly, "Masanori Hanno, you're not a match for me. Japan has basically submitted, so you don't have to persist anymore. If you're willing to submit to Qin, I'll give you preferential treatment in the future." Masanori Hanno felt quite complicated because Japan had already perished and would never exist again. She was one of the last remaining factions in Japan, so she had many feelings for Japan. Masanori Hanno could not bear to let it perish like this. However, the 3 great devils behind her were quite open-minded. Not only had Japan perished, but all other countries might perish in the future. Qin's rise was unstoppable, so they decided to persuade Masanori Hanno to submit to Qin. She had a good relationship with Qin's legatee and had never opposed him before. Moreover, she was a legatee, so she would be able to obtain a high position in Qin. This was the best choice. Masanori Hanno was quite shaken, but under the persuasion of her 3 closest great devils, she finally nodded and agreed. After the last faction submitted, Japan perished, and the 6 countries perished. The eastern coastline was unified, and the next step was to attack the eastern side of China. Originally, the 6 armies had ferociously attacked China, and the defending Chinese factions could only defend for a while. Even though various factions continuously rushed to the east, Qin's factions also rushed to the east at an even faster speed. However, when Qin and the 6 armies met up, they broke through the defenses of the eastern side of China in one fell swoop. They gave off an incredibly powerful aura, and they were unstoppable. The eastern side of China could only continuously retreat. In the end, the various factions desperately resisted, and some of the traps they had set up beforehand were barely able to stop Qin in the Wundan region. By now, 3/4 of the eastern side of China had been conquered by Qin. Adding on the 6 countries, 90% of the eastern side of the Midland continent had been conquered. Chapter 949. Now, Great Qin's army and city lords were suppressing the surrounding areas, stabilizing the situation and defending against attacks from the various sides. Zhao Fu started to take inventory of their gains. They had obtained 6,500 great cities and 1,500 cities. Most of the great cities came from the 6 countries, and almost all of the cities came from the 6 countries. When Qin had ordered the 6 countries to attack China, the Chinese side had been utterly defeated, and they had almost reached the central region. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin's people had predicted that they would not be able to defend the eastern side, so they had set up a defensive zone nearby. Otherwise, Qin Zhao might have been able to conquer the central region and reach the western side of the Midland continent. The current situation was quite ironic. It could be said that the Chinese side had killed their own people, and they had even used foreign powers to harm the Chinese side. However, the Chinese side had cooperated with the other countries, while Qin had forced them to submit. The Chinese side had been utterly defeated, and many factions had to relocate. As such, Qin's gains in the eastern side of China were quite small, and he had conquered most of the regions, which were 3,100 in total. There were 6,500 great cities and 1,500 cities, which gave Qin 3.5 billion people and 500 million stage 1 soldiers. Now, Qin's population had reached 8.5 billion people and 900 million soldiers. There were 820 million stage 1 soldiers, 10 million stage 2 soldiers, 1.8 million stage 3 soldiers, and 60,000 stage 4 soldiers. Qin Zhao controlled 6,820 regions, 1 marquee city, 3 barony cities, 6 capital cities, 15070 great cities, and 4,421 cities. Qin's strength had greatly increased, and his main focus was to digest these people and regions. He could not do anything to the outside world, as they had taken too many people. They had taken more than 1/3 of Qin's population, and if they rebelled, it would be difficult to deal with them. There was also the problem of regions. Before, Qin still had 1,000 or so regions to clear out, and now he had to clear out 3,000 regions. This was not a simple matter, and adding on the construction of the Great Wall, it would take at least a year to complete. In order to stabilize the people's morale, Zhao Fu first rewarded the players and indigenous residents. This time, the performance of the 6 countries was very good, especially the people of Ri Nation. They were very fierce when attacking Huaxia, and they even shouted the slogan, Mighty Qin, which made Zhao Fu feel very strange. But now the 6 kingdoms had become a thing of the past. They were also the people of Qin, and Zhao Fu did not demote them to untouchables. They could receive the normal treatment of the people of Qin, which made them feel relieved. In order to celebrate this victory, Qin also held a banquet to reward everyone. Compared to Qin's jubilation, the various forces in the central continent looked gloomy. They looked at the people around them suspiciously. After the battle with the Ri Nation, the forces that originally had their own thoughts became even more distrustful of each other. If there were more traitors like Ri, once Qin attacked again, they would really fall apart. Now, Qin had almost occupied the east and was entrenched in the north. It could be said that half of the Middle-earth had been conquered by Qin. As such, their resistance had been greatly reduced. As such, they could only discuss how to prevent such a thing from happening again, and the people who had plotted against Qin also helped them. There was also the person who had led the invasions, the person who had led the 21 countries in invading China. Great Qin had already punished him, and the key figures had all been killed. His family had also been destroyed, and his family could only struggle at death's door. Now, there were 20 or so women kneeling in front of Zhao Fu. They were from these families, and 2 of them were the most outstanding. One of them was Pu Xiaohai, the person who had led the Goryeo invasion. She had said that Huaxia's culture had been stolen from Goryeo people. Now she, her mother, and her sister were all kneeling on the ground like pitiful little beasts. There was another person who was much more dignified and virtuous. She was from Ri Nation and wore a red kimono. She had jet-black hair and knelt on the ground, holding a sword. She was Oda Kamaya's older sister, Oda Kana. Oda Kamaya had been quite famous in the early days as the descendant of Oda Nobunaga, but he had been surpassed by others, such as Masanori Hanno and the Emperor. As the person who had led the Japanese invasion of China, Zhao Fu had not treated him well, and he had never thought about submitting to Qin. After Qin had forced his way into the city, Oda Kamaya had used the Muramasa demon blade that gave off a blood-red light to commit suicide. The Muramasa demon blade was the blade that Oda Kana was holding. Even though it was in its scabbard, it gave off an evil aura. Zhao Fu grabbed at the air, and the Muramasa demon blade appeared in Zhao Fu's hand. Zhao Fu pulled out the blade, and a massive evil aura spread out. The blade gave off a cold light, causing people's hairs to stand on end. This blade gave off an evil aura, and it was a saint armament. It had most likely killed many people. Zhao Fu was not very interested in this blade, but seeing that Zhao Sha seemed quite interested in it, Zhao Fu decided to give it to him. Zhao Sha had the potential to become a higher being, and Zhao Fu would do everything he could to nurture him. Before, Zhao Sha had obtained an assassin legacy and used a dagger, which was suitable for assassination. Now that he had given the Muramasa demon blade to Zhao Fu, he would be able to face off against others. After taking care of everything, Zhao Fu came before Oda Kana. Zhao Fu was quite interested in this woman, and he picked her up. Oda Kana's face became red, and she understood what was going to happen next. However, for the Oda family, she had to properly serve this man. Oda Kana lightly hugged Zhao Fu and pressed her head against Zhao Fu's chest. Zhao Fu hugged her and some other women as they walked into the refining pavilion. After some indescribable things, Zhao Fu put on his clothes with Oda Kana's help. After coming outside, Zhao Fu could not help but sigh. It seems that Japanese women are the best at serving men. At the same time, Zhao Fu took out the 4 nation armaments and prepared to refine 3 of them into Qin City's nation armaments. As for the 3 Japanese divine armaments, Zhao Fu had asked the Golden Dragon about them, and the Golden Dragon had said that they were quite special. Some were like ordinary weapons, some were like nation armaments, and some were like clan armaments. If he refined them into ordinary nation armaments, they would not be able to be used to their full potential and would destroy their original value. Under the Golden Dragon's suggestion, Zhao Fu planned to nurture the 3 Japanese divine armaments into the most powerful weapons of slaughter. This was not for Zhao Fu himself but for the primogenitor statue. After all, the 3 Japanese divine armaments' attributes were quite similar to the primogenitor statue, so he could give them to it to use. Chapter 950. As for the abilities after nurturing them, the Golden Dragon had already explained to Zhao Fu that they would be the most powerful killing weapon, and their effects would be heaven-shaking and earth-shattering. Even godly spirits would fear them. However, in order to display its effects, he had to at least completely refine the primogenitor statue. This was because the 3 divine artifacts had already fused with the primogenitor statue, and the 3 divine artifacts would be reborn with him. Moreover, he needed the primogenitor statue to be able to use them. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded out as a great desolate era cauldron once again condensed in the sky. The 3 nation armaments were refined by a formless flame within it, and all of their auras and marks disappeared before being wiped away. Great Qin's fate fused into them, causing them to go through changes. Indonesia's nation armament was a circular shield made of bronze. There were pictures of ancient Indonesia battles engraved on it, and Qin's fate caused the bronze shield's killing and conquering aura to become even more intense. Malaysia's nation armament was a small boat that looked quite ordinary but gave off a powerful aura. There were black dragon inscriptions on the boat, and its aura became more noble. Finally, Country F's nation armament was a spear. After Qin's fate fused into it, the spear became jet black and gave off a heavy and mysterious aura. After refining these 3 nation armaments, Zhao Fu placed them next to Qin's city heart. Qin now had 10 or so nation armaments. Following this, Zhao Fu went to the Blood Lake and fused the 3 nation armaments into the primogenitor statue's chest. The process was naturally quite smooth. After taking care of this, Qin did not have much else to do. He just had to clear out regions, build a great wall, and digest the captured people. On the 3rd day, another shocking event happened. Perhaps because of Zhao Fu, the Spirit Light World's real world was destroyed ahead of time, and all of the Spirit Light creatures entered it. Because the real world was about to be destroyed, Zhao Fu felt quite curious about this. As such, he carefully gathered information about the spirit light race so that he could know some things ahead of time. Before, the spirit light race had not received any system announcements about the world being destroyed, but after that battle, they suddenly received a system announcement. Moreover, there were only 7 days left before the world was destroyed. It seemed that the effects of that battle had been quite great. The spirit light world was the world that would be destroyed the fastest, which was quite disadvantageous. Fortunately, it was not like the human world, where an opening had been opened in the heaven domain boundary, so other worlds would not invade. If one side died, they would truly die, but the other side wouldn't. The side that would truly die would definitely be at a disadvantage. If they died, then so be it. The more they fought, the smaller their numbers would be. On the other hand, the other side had an undying body. At most, their battle prowess would be slightly weakened. It was a pity that there was the dark demon world between the human world and the spirit light world, or else Zhao Fu would have been able to invade the spirit light world with the advantage of not dying. The spirit light world had already entered a defensive state and had constructed a large number of defenses at the boundary of the world. This was because their world had already been destroyed, and once the heaven domain boundary disappeared, the previous world and other worlds would invade. They definitely would not be able to do so without defenses. They felt immense hatred towards Great Qin's legatee, who had caused their world to be destroyed ahead of time. Moreover, all of the spirit light world's creatures would enter the heaven awakened world, regardless of whether they were intelligent or not. Wild beasts, insects, fish, and all sorts of birds would enter, but no one knew the specifics. Qin continued to divide the various alliances. Before, when Qin occupied one side, many people had wavered. Now that Qin occupied half of the Midland continent, they had an even greater advantage. At the same time, because Qin was about to unify the Midland continent, the other continents did not just help. After Qin unified the Midland continent, their continents would be in danger, so they allied even more closely and attacked Qin a few times. What Zhao Fu did not expect was that a second kingdom had appeared in the human world. It was June 14th, and a dragon's roar sounded throughout the human world. The weather suddenly changed as the heaven and earth fate started to roil. The western sky was covered by a layer of golden light, and it was filled with a holy king's aura. It caused tens of thousands of people to submit. Even though Zhao Fu was in China, he could clearly sense this power. Golden snowflakes floated in the sky, creating a majestic and beautiful scene. Establishing a kingdom was an incredibly important matter for the entire human world, and it could cause the heavens and earth to go through changes. In a certain place in the western continent, countless people knelt on the ground as golden light shined down from the sky. A golden western dragon gave off a massive aura as it spiraled in the sky. On the heaven prayer platform, there was a confident and beautiful woman wearing a silver knight's dress and holding a golden sword, creating a dignified and holy scene. The person who had established the kingdom was Tina Pendragon, and the kingdom was called the Great British Empire. It had 320 regions and was a level 3 barony kingdom. Everyone in the human world knew Tina Pendragon's name, and she was hailed as the most legendary woman in the human world. No one could compare to her, and all women paled in comparison to her. Firstly, she was born into an incredibly noble family, and she was the descendant of the greatest Western legend, King Arthur. From the very beginning, she had been respected by the Western factions, and her self-confidence, righteousness, and bravery made countless people infatuated. Next was her power. She was definitely one of the most powerful people in the human world. She was the leader of the 8 legatees, and her status was only below that of the world protector. From this, it could be seen just how powerful she was. Finally, there was her peerlessly beautiful looks. No matter if it was a man or a woman, they would all fall in love with her. Compared to Qin Han, who used violence to control violence and kill to stop killing, he used soldiers to conquer the world. He was like a ferocious and invincible army, and he was incredibly ferocious. Tina Pendragon subdued people with virtue, treated them with kindness, and ruled them with benevolence. In the end, she would conquer them with force. She walked the path of benevolence and sainthood, while Qin walked the path of tyranny. Both paths had their pros and cons. Of course, the path of benevolence did not develop as quickly as the path of tyranny. However, the path of tyranny had many enemies, while the path of benevolence attracted many talented people to join. Tina Pendragon used this method, and most people submitted to her willingly. She rarely started battles, and those who submitted to her were all very loyal. They were not like Qin Han, who fought battles every day without a moment's rest. If anyone was dissatisfied, she would use force to conquer them. Chapter 951. Countless people had expected that she would be able to establish a kingdom, as she was simply too popular in the Western continent. She was loved and respected by almost everyone, not just players but indigenous residents and system main cities as well. This was the biggest reason why she had been able to establish a kingdom. However, it was too late for anyone to establish a kingdom, as Qin City was about to unify the Midland continent. Even if they established a kingdom, did they have the strength to resist it? After hearing about this, Zhao Fu was not too surprised. Right now, the most important thing was to unify the Midland continent, and only after unifying the Midland continent would they make a move against the other continent. Taking down the Western continent now would be quite troublesome. However, Zhao Fu did not care too much about a small barony kingdom, as it had the confidence of a marquisate kingdom. Apart from Tina Pendragon, the Pharaoh Kingdom's legatee would also establish a kingdom soon. After all, the southern continent corresponded to Africa in the real world, and there were very few dynasty legatees there. Moreover, it was a primitive tribal society, and the Pharaoh Kingdom had many advantages there. On July 5th, almost everyone in the real world returned to the real world, and no one stayed in the heaven-awakened world. This was the last day of the real world's destruction. As the sun rose, the darkness faded, revealing a blue sky and white clouds. The sparrows on the branches happily chirped, and Zhao Fu woke up early and ate some breakfast. Now that it was the last day, and the real world was about to be destroyed, Zhao Fu could not help but feel a bit melancholic. After all, he had lived on Earth for 20 or so years, and this place contained countless memories. Some were painful, some were happy, some were the most difficult, and some were the happiest. Now that it was about to be destroyed, Zhao Fu could not help but feel these emotions. It was not just Zhao Fu, everyone else felt the same way. The older they were, the more reluctant they felt. China had been born here for 5,000 years, and it had contained China's history and culture. Now it was time for everything to come to an end, and humans would begin a new era, record new history, and create a new world. The Ying family was filled with joy, and everyone could not help but feel excited. Today was the day that they could enter Qin, ending the awkward situation of not being able to enter Qin despite being part of the Qin royal family. From now on, the Ying family would be the true royal family of Qin. Qin had swept through the heaven-awakened world, and was incredibly powerful. Almost no one could stop him, and the Ying family did not have to pay any price. At first, they had looked down on Qin's legatee because he was an outsider. He only had a bit of the Ying family bloodline. He was not even a branch family. The Ying family had their legatee because he was a member of the Qin's legatee. This humiliation was often mocked by other factions, and they said some nasty things, such as how the Ying family had no one left and that the legatee had been obtained by a bastard. It was simply too laughable that the Ying family was one of China's 5 great families. Not only did others mock him, but the Ying family also hated this humiliation. They wanted to get rid of him and cut him into pieces to vent their hatred. However, What the Ing family and countless people had never expected was that Qin had relied on that bastard to walk to the peak of the world without anyone's help. His performance had shocked the world time and time again. Now, not only did he have to help Qin recover, but he also had to unify China, the Midland continent, and the human world. Who in the world could do this? Before, Tina Pendragon was the most legendary woman in the human world. In front of her, anyone would pale in comparison, and no one could compare to her. Now, there was someone who could compare to her and even completely surpassed her. From a nameless person, his name had resounded throughout China, the human world, and several worlds. Prince Qin had started his own legend. Now, he had established a huge empire, a fierce name that intimidated the world, and a never-ending mystery. He was the leader of the human world, and all the major events in the world were related to him. Everything revolved around him, and his experiences were enough to write a legend. Let alone Tina Pendragon, even the human world would pale in comparison to him. No one knew how much potential he had, and no one knew how far he could go. The only thing they knew was that he would surpass their imagination. If there was a selection of the greatest figures of the new century, the first place would definitely be Prince Qin. No one would be able to surpass him in the future. Now, the Ing family only rejoiced and had no other emotions. They rejoiced that Qin's legatee had found the best master, that their ancestors had chosen the most suitable person, and that the outsider was Prince Qin. Now, it was true that no one in the Ing family could compare to him. Who in the world could compare to him? Even if this person was not Prince Qin's legatee, his future would still be extraordinary. It could be said that it wasn't a matter of whether the Ing family thought highly of Great Qin's legatee or not, but whether or not the Ing family could enter Great Qin's legatee's eyes. Right now, the Ing family could only desperately curry favor with Great Qin's legatee, and they would do anything Great Qin's legatee gave them. They just wanted Prince Qin to like the Ing family and not despise the Ing family. Here, an important figure was Zhao Fu, the acting head of the Ing family and the spokesperson of Prince Qin. To be honest, the heads of the Ing family and the leaders of the Ing family also looked down on Zhao Fu, because Zhao Fu was also an outsider with a low status and no outstanding ability. There were many people like him in the Ing family, but Prince Qin chose him to be the spokesperson. He wondered what kind of luck Zhao Fu had to be able to catch Great Qin's legatee's eye. Now, he was an important minister of Great Qin, and he was one of Great Qin's legatee's favorites. In the beginning, the heads of the Ing family and the leaders of the Ing family treated Zhao Fu well. However, because of Prince Qin's legatee, they looked down on Zhao Fu, just like other people. However, with Zhao Fu's current achievements, they changed their minds. Now, their identities were reversed. Zhao Fu had a high status, while Zhao Fu looked down on them. How could they dare to look down on Zhao Fu? Now, they could only try their best to curry favor with Zhao Fu. At the same time, they rejoiced that Zhao Fu had been chosen by Great Qin's legatee as his representative. If it wasn't for him, the Ing family might not have any connection with Great Qin's legatee, and if that happened, Great Qin's legatee would have refused to acknowledge them or even destroyed them. Because of Zhao Fu, the distance between them and Prince Qin was shortened, and he was also recognized by Prince Qin. Now, they could even become the head of Qin's legatee. Without Zhao Fu, it was almost impossible for them to have such a thing. Chapter 952. Today, the Ing family's family leaders had come to find Zhao Fu and warmly smiled as they talked to Zhao Fu about entering Qin. Zhao Fu told them not to worry and that, as long as they entered the Heaven Awakened world, there would be people to receive them. After hearing this, the family leaders smiled and left, and they excitedly waited for the final moment to arrive. Now that Zhao Fu had nothing to do, he waited for the real world to be destroyed. At that moment, Ing Shi came to find Zhao Fu, and Zhao Fu felt quite surprised because he had not seen her in a long time. It seemed that ever since he had become the proxy family leader, he had not seen her very often. "Zhao Fu, is Qingyang all right?" She looked quite haggard and slightly frowned as she came to Zhao Fu and asked worriedly. Hearing this, Zhao Fu could not help but think of how she and Wu Zetian would often lie on the bed, and he smiled as he replied, "She's fine." "Has that lecherous Emperor Qin not touched her?" She asked Zhao Fu in disbelief. After all, how could any woman who entered Qin be fine? Just based on the number of women, there were countless. After all, that lecherous and licentious Emperor Qin would take all of the beauties from every kingdom he conquered. Zhao Fu did not know how to reply because Zhao Fu had long since touched Wu Qingyang, and he was the lecherous and licentious Emperor Qin. Seeing that Zhao Fu did not know how to reply, she thought that Emperor Qin had done something to Wu Qingyang, and she felt quite angry as she glared at Zhao Fu and said, "Zhao Fu, how could you be like this? Qingyang has always chosen you as her man and has slept with you before. How could you give your woman to Emperor Qin?" Zhao Fu really didn't know how to answer. He was Prince Qin, and there was no such thing as giving his woman to someone else. How could he tell Shi that he was Prince Qin? Now it was the last moment of the real world, but Zhao Fu still wanted to wait until the real world was destroyed. Qin would understand when they entered the real world. "It's not what you think. I'm taking care of Qingyang. She's doing well. You'll understand when you enter the Qin state." Zhao Fu could only explain it this way. Hearing this, Shi's expression became better. She lowered her head and asked in a small voice, "What's your legatee like? Are they really cruel, bloodthirsty, and licentious?" Zhao Fu felt quite surprised. Looking at her, he couldn't help but think about how the Ying family wanted to send Shi to Qin City as his concubine. It seemed that she wasn't very willing, but seeing that she had helped him before, Zhao Fu decided to send Shi to Qin City. "Don't worry. I'll definitely persuade the legatee to give up on this." Shi looked up at Zhao Fu in delight. She had been worried about this for a long time. She didn't want to be locked up in the Qin palace every day and be played by the rumored ferocious legatee. Even though she was also a member of the Ying family, it was difficult for her to accept such an outcome. However, Shi thought about what the leader of the Ying family had said. No matter what, she had to think about the Ying family and her parents and relatives. This time, it wasn't just her but 6 pure-blooded women from the Ying family as concubines. Only then would the legatee and the Ying family be connected, and the Ying family's status in the Qin state could be preserved. Thinking about this, the smile on Shi's face faded as she shook her head and said, "Thank you, but there's no need. I just wanted to ask if the legatee of Qin is as terrifying as the rumors say, and how he treats women." Zhao Fu didn't quite understand, but how could he speak ill of him? As such, he shamelessly said, "The legatee is actually a very good person, and the rumors are all false. He's very kind and friendly, especially to the people of the Qin palace. As such, he's deeply loved by the people of the Qin state. At the same time, he doesn't have a bad temper and is never arrogant. He's always been humble, discussing with his ministers, and after speaking for an hour, Shi looked at Zhao Fu suspiciously. According to Zhao Fu, the legatee of Qin state was a man that countless women were infatuated with. This was because the legatee of Qin state that Zhao Fu spoke of was not only incredibly handsome, but he also had an outstanding temperament. He was very kind and treated others with respect, and most importantly, he was very gentle to women. Countless women were infatuated with him. It could be said that Zhao Fu was incredibly shameless and had said all sorts of good things about himself, making him seem like the best man in the world. Seeing that Zhao Fu was about to continue, Shi could not help but say, "All right, stop praising your legatee. In actuality, it would be great if he was half as good as you. I really envy Qingyang for finding the person she likes and being able to be with him." Even though Shi interrupted Zhao Fu and did not believe Zhao Fu's words, her mood became much better, and she was not as depressed as before. Looking at her, Zhao Fu could not help but say, "Really, don't force yourself. If you're not willing, I'll definitely persuade the legatee not to agree. You don't have to worry about the Ying family, because the legatee has never thought about destroying the Ying family and has always been the royal family of Qin State. I can guarantee this with my life." "Really?" She was incredibly moved. Hearing that Zhao Fu was willing to help her, she could not help but feel incredibly moved, and tears danced in her eyes. Right now, everyone was trying to force her to become the legatee's concubine, and she felt incredibly helpless. Zhao Fu nodded seriously because he was the legatee of Qin State, so he could definitely do it. "Thank you so much. I never thought that you would be so important to the legatee of Qin State that you could even persuade him. I've underestimated you in the past, and I apologize for my arrogance. Now I realize that the biggest mistake I've made was giving you to Qingyang." She said to Zhao Fu from the bottom of her heart. Zhao Fu lightly laughed. "Let bygones be bygones. Back then, I relied on your protection to survive until now, or else I would have long since been killed by the Li family." She smiled and nodded, and the two of them chatted for a while before Shi happily left. Following this, Zhao Fu turned on his computer for the last time. By now, the internet was down, but there were messages from a few days ago. The class president had sent him an address in the Heaven Awakened world, telling him to find him if things weren't going well. Zhao Fu was incredibly warm-hearted. The class president Jing Dong's faction was in the southern part of the Midland continent, and Zhao Fu wondered what he would do after Qin State unified the Midland continent. He could not send any messages, so Zhao Fu could only laugh. There was also Wang Yu, who he had helped before, who was his deskmate from high school. She had borrowed money from the group and sent a message to Zhao Fu, saying that her luck had been quite good recently, and she had obtained 3 gold coins. She wanted to return the money to Zhao Fu and asked Zhao Fu for his address. Chapter 953. Soon, it was noon, and no one knew exactly when the world would be destroyed. Jing Yuqin had prepared a table full of food and called Zhao Fu to eat. This was the first time that Zhao Fu had eaten 2 meals in a row in the real world since the Heaven Awakened world had opened. Zhao Fu did not hold back, as Jing Yuqin's food was quite to his liking. Jing Yuqin sat by the side and smiled as she picked food for Zhao Fu. Her aura had become more and more mature, and her face was ruddy and her eyes were incredibly seductive. Looking at her like this, Zhao Fu almost wanted to eat her up. Ever since he had gone to university, he had always fantasized about doing certain things with her. Facing Zhao Fu's invasive gaze, Jing Yuqin's face became red and she lowered her head, feeling quite expectant. Her body had been enduring the 6 desires demonic qi for such a long time, and she had to rely on herself every day and night. Images of her doing it with Zhao Fu appeared in her mind. Before, she did not have much confidence because she was not young anymore, and she was afraid that Zhao Fu would not be interested in her. However, when she saw Zhao Fu do it with Zhang Hongmei, who was a few years older than her, she found that Zhao Fu was even more powerful than usual, making it so that Zhang Hongmei could only come once every few days. She also found out about Zhao Fu's special preferences. The atmosphere was quite ambiguous, and Zhao Fu smiled. Just as he was about to do something, the heavens and earth started to change, and clouds started to swirl. The entire ground started to tremble, and Zhao Fu understood that the final moment had arrived, so he walked out of the villa. Countless rainbow-colored lights descended from the sky, and a boundless aura rushed out, causing people's souls to tremble. Everyone in the world came outside and looked at this dreamlike scene. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded out in the sky, and that aura swept through the world like a wild gale. In front of that massive aura, everyone felt incredibly small and powerless. The image of another world gradually appeared in the sky. There were towering trees, majestic mountains, lakes that were as big as oceans, and all sorts of ferocious beasts. Rainbow-colored lights and dense spirit chi filled the air, making it seem like a primordial world. This illusory world gave off an ancient and powerful aura. This was the heaven-awakened world. After the heaven-awakened world appeared, an unimaginably powerful attractive force appeared. This attractive force was not only corporeal but illusory, and it felt as if even souls were going to be sucked away. The entire human world continued to collapse, and the ground violently trembled as countless cracks appeared. Lava flowed out of the cracks, and flames rushed into the sky as smoke and dust filled the air. Apocalyptic bolts of lightning continuously blasted the ground, making it seem like the end of the world. However, at that moment, all living creatures in the world were sucked into the illusory world by an invisible suction force. It was not just humans but other living creatures as well. Zhao Fu was also sucked into that massive wave of energy, and he felt dizzy before he found himself in the heaven-awakened world. His body gave off a rainbow light, and at the same time, a system announcement sounded out in his mind that his body in the real world had fused with his body in the heaven-awakened world. All of the humans fused with their bodies in the heaven-awakened world, and countless other living creatures submitted. For example, countless fish were released into the water by a formless energy, countless wild beasts were released into the forests, and countless birds were allowed to fly in the sky. Now, it could be said that not only had the human world entered the heaven-awakened world, but other living creatures had also been brought into the heaven-awakened world. The real world was most likely going to be destroyed. The ground there would collapse and the surface would be covered with lava. There would be smoke and dust everywhere, and it would be impossible for any living creatures to survive. The blue star would become a dead star that gave off fiery light. In actuality, Earth had not truly been destroyed because it still existed. Perhaps after billions of years of development, life would appear again, and perhaps humans would appear again. Perhaps the heaven-awakened world would descend again. After thinking for a while, Li Si came up and reported, "Your Majesty, the Ying family has entered the Qin city. The Ying family's people have already entered the great Qin Empire, and I've already made arrangements for them." Hearing this, Zhao Fu calmly nodded. Following this, the Ying family's family leaders and hundreds of important figures from the Ying family suppressed their excitement because they were about to meet the person they dreamed of meeting, Legatee Qin. He was the person the Ying family respected the most, and he was the pride of the Qin family. Now, they were waiting outside the palace for Legatee Qin's summons, and they could not help but guess what kind of person Legatee Qin was. Some said that he was incredibly handsome and could cause all women in the world to fall for him, while others said that he was incredibly dignified and domineering, or else he would not have been able to create such a ferocious Qin. Others said that Legatee Qin was the most charismatic person. Now that they were about to meet Great Qin's legatee, the man who had ascended to the top of the human world, everyone had their own guesses. Even the calm and experienced family leaders couldn't help but wonder what Great Qin's legatee was like. Yingxi did not think too much about it because with Zhao Fu's assurance, she did not have to worry. No matter what Legatee Qin was like, she did not want to care too much about him. From the rumors, he was definitely not a good person. Instead, Yingxi wanted to see Zhao Fu and Wu Qingyang more. After all, they had relied on Zhao Fu this time, and Yingxi felt incredibly grateful towards him. Only with him by her side would she be able to relax. As for Wu Qingyang, she was the person closest to her. "Summon! All members of the Ying family, enter the palace!" A loud cry sounded out, and the Ying family's people became nervous. They obediently lowered their heads to avoid angering that terrifying Legatee Qin as they followed the guards into the palace. After walking into the palace, the Ying family's people knelt down and cried out in unison, "We greet your Majesty! May your Majesty live for 10,000 years! You may rise!" A familiar voice sounded out in their ears, causing them to feel quite startled. Why was Zhao Fu's voice here? Only a sovereign king could say such a thing, and now that Legatee Qin had said such a thing, they used this opportunity to look at the person sitting on the throne. What they saw made them feel as if they were going to have a heart attack. The family leader's legs became weak, and they almost knelt to the ground. Was the person sitting on the throne really Zhao Fu? Was Zhao Fu really Legatee Qin? The Ying family's people looked incredibly shocked as they stared at Zhao Fu. They had never thought that Zhao Fu was Legatee Qin, that incredibly mysterious and ferocious legatee, who they could not find no matter how hard they tried, had actually been in the Ying family from the very beginning. Are you surprised that we are Legatee Qin? Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he sat on the throne. Chapter 954. They had never thought that Zhao Fu was Qin's legatee. In the beginning, they had looked down on Zhao Fu because Zhao Fu had a lowly background. Thinking about it now, they felt quite afraid. If they had done anything to Zhao Fu back then, the entire Ying family might have been wiped out by him, as he was the person with the highest authority in Qin. At the same time, they felt incredibly regretful. Why hadn't they known that Zhao Fu was Qin's legatee? That way, they would have been able to curry favor with him. Everyone cursed themselves for being so stupid. They had missed such a good opportunity and had foolishly treated Zhao Fu as a spokesperson. He was the legatee of Qin's legatee that they had dreamed of. Now, the Ying family's people could only hope that Zhao Fu wouldn't mind what they had done in the past. Otherwise, the consequences would be dire. Thinking about that, everyone broke out in cold sweat and felt terrified. Their bodies slightly trembled, and they begged Zhao Fu to forgive them. The person who was the most shocked was Ying Shi, as she was the first to come into contact with Zhao Fu. Back then, Zhao Fu had been an unremarkable minor figure in her eyes, but Zhao Fu's performance time and time again had caused her to feel incredibly shocked. His status had already surpassed hers. However, she had never thought that Zhao Fu's status would be so terrifying. With her status, she couldn't even compare to a hair of his, as Zhao Fu had already become the most prestigious person in the world. Now, Ying Shi didn't even dare to look at Zhao Fu because the Zhao Fu in her mind was completely different from the current Zhao Fu. This made her feel fear and lowly, and the only thing that made her feel fortunate was that her relationship with him wasn't that bad. However, Ying Shi suddenly remembered what she had said to Zhao Fu before the world had been destroyed. She had spoken badly about him to his face, and Ying Shi's face became pale. She cursed herself for being too stupid to say such things to his face. She was definitely doomed. At the same time, Ying Shi completely understood why Wu Qingyang had chosen to enter the Qin state. It was because the man she had chosen had always been the emperor of the Qin state. If she did not enter the Qin state, who else would enter the Qin state? He was truly blind. With his heaven-defying luck, he had actually managed to find Prince Qin. Unfortunately, because he was blind, he had not been able to see Zhao Fu's true value and had even given him to Wu Qingyang. Now, Ying Shi felt incredibly regretful. Before, when Wu Qingyang had said that Zhao Fu would have extraordinary achievements in the future, she hadn't believed it. After all, Zhao Fu didn't seem like much, and how could she have known that he was the emperor of the Qin state? Extraordinary achievements? Now, he was even more godly. If she had known that Zhao Fu was the emperor of the Qin state, perhaps he would have had great power in the Qin state. However, that was impossible now, and there was no way for her to start over. All of you, rise. In the beginning, we didn't want to return to the Ying family, nor did we want to accept the Ying family as the Qin state's royal clan. However, we are still a member of the Ying family, and when we were acting as the clan leader, you all performed quite well, so we can acknowledge your identities. Zhao Fu, who was sitting on his throne, looked at the Ying family members kneeling on the ground in fear as he spoke in a dignified voice. This caused the Ying family members to let out a sigh of relief, and their sadness turned into joy. They felt incredibly grateful towards Zhao Fu, and Zhao Fu gave them some rewards before concluding the meeting. After the meeting concluded, Wu Qingyang, who had been waiting by the side, walked out. She looked at Wu Qingyang and could not help but feel a lump in her throat. She leapt into Wu Qingyang's embrace and started to cry. She was happy to see Wu Qingyang, but she also felt remorseful and guilty. What is it, little she? Did that bad person bully you? Wu Qingyang raised her head and glared at Zhao Fu, while Zhao Fu looked incredibly innocent because he hadn't done anything. She shook her head and explained, Zhao Fu didn't bully me, I was just scared by his identity. Also, I'm so happy to see you. So that's what it was. I never thought that that fellow was actually Emperor Qin, and I was quite shocked. However, he's not as terrifying as the rumors say, and he's quite nice to people, Wu Qingyang said as she lightly laughed. Zhao Fu saw that they were good sisters and did not disturb them. After all, the real world had just been destroyed, and there were many things for Zhao Fu to take care of. Following this, Zhao Fu's uncle's family heard about this, and they looked incredibly shocked. They had never thought that Zhao Fu was the supreme, savage, and ruthless Emperor Qin. Was this the same Zhao Fu that they knew? Was this the same Zhao Fu who was their relative? Now, they truly did not dare to believe this. After all, this Zhao Fu was far too different from the Emperor Qin from the rumors. If it wasn't for the fact that the entire Ying family knew about this, they would have thought that this was fake. They then thought about what had happened before. They had almost been chased out of the Ying family by Zhao Fu, and if it wasn't for their maternal grandparents pleading for them. Thinking about what they had done to Zhao Fu in the past, their faces became incredibly pale, and they felt incredibly regretful. They hated themselves for being so stupid and offending him in the past. In the future, they would not have any hope at all. After hearing about this, Zhao Fu's cousin's face became incredibly pale. He remembered how he had cursed Zhao Fu back then, saying that he was nothing and that he was just a dog in front of Emperor Qin who had been lucky enough to be favored by a good master. Zhao Fu's cousin had never thought that Zhao Fu was Emperor Qin. How could this be? How could he be the supreme Emperor Qin? He did not dare to believe this news, and at the same time, he felt a lingering fear. He was most likely the only person who had dared to curse at Emperor Qin like this and not die. After all, anyone who dared to curse at Emperor Qin like this would definitely be cut into thousands of pieces and executed. Zhao Fu's cousin sighed and shook his head. Now, he hoped that Zhao Fu would not kill them. That would be enough, and he could let go of Jing Jiao's matter. After all, it was her own choice. Zhao Fu's uncle and auntie knelt in front of the two elders and cried, begging them to bring them into the Qin imperial palace to see Zhao Fu and apologize to him. As long as they could vent their anger, they would do anything, and they asked the two elders to think about their two grandsons. Now that they knew that Zhao Fu was Great Qin's legatee, he would be able to casually take over a few cities. If that happened, their family would not have to worry for the rest of their lives, and they would be high and mighty city lords. Originally, it was only Zhao Fu's grandparents who did not want to go. However, after Zhao Fu's uncle and auntie continuously cried and begged, they decided to go to Zhao Fu and beg for mercy. However, they could not even enter the Qin imperial palace, and they were given a medium-sized courtyard. A manager coldly harumphed, "From now on, you will live here. His Majesty has already done everything he could. If you continue to look for His Majesty, he will definitely expel you from Qin." Hearing this, Zhao Fu's uncle and his family's faces paled. Chapter 955. As for Great Qin's legatee, who had been hiding his identity this entire time, no one knew his true identity. Great Qin's legatee's true identity had always been an unsolved mystery in the human world, and now that this secret had been revealed, it was easy to imagine the commotion it caused. No one would have thought that the lucky person chosen by Prince Qin, Zhao Fu, was actually Prince Qin. All of this was because Zhao Fu was too mediocre and ordinary. He was just an ordinary, minor figure. Even though Zhao Fu had become Great Qin's legatee's representative and everyone knew about him, everyone understood that he was just Great Qin's legatee's puppet. How could they look up to such a person? They did not care much about such a person. Now, not only were the legatees and the rulers of kingdoms shocked by this news, such as C.G., Tina Pendragon, Akhenaten, Geoffrey, and many others. None of them had thought that Great Qin's legatee, who was incredibly ferocious and bloodthirsty, would have been such an ordinary minor figure. Perhaps if such a minor figure had appeared in front of them, they wouldn't have even looked at him. At the same time, many people felt admiration for an ordinary person without any faction or resources. He had built up such a grand and powerful Qin empire by himself. Some people felt quite regretful. They had never thought that Prince Qin, who the Ying family had not been able to find, had been hiding in the Ying family this entire time. If they had known this, they would have allied together to destroy the Ying family. That way they would have been able to kill Prince Qin as well. Once Prince Qin died, the Qin Empire would naturally collapse, and their threat would be gone. They would not have ended up like this. It was a pity that there was no medicine for regret in the world. Now, apart from regret, they could only sigh. The Qin Empire had taken over half of the continent, and their future was filled with darkness without any light or hope. After the large factions found out about Zhao Fu's true identity, they at most felt shocked and regretful. However, there was one faction that reacted the most, and everyone looked incredibly shocked. They could not believe this was true, and that faction was the Great Tang's Li family. When the Li family's old patriarch found out that the illegitimate child was Prince Qin, he felt as if he had been struck by a heavy blow and his mind went blank. He then coughed up a mouthful of blood and looked as if he had aged 10 or so years. His eyes became empty, and he became listless. Li Zhe was Zhao Fu's father, and his expression was incredibly unsightly. He had never thought that a woman he had casually played with would give birth to such a terrifying figure. That despicable bastard child was Prince Qin. Li Baiqing was also incredibly shocked, and he had never thought that the minor figure he had looked down on, the person he had never thought highly of, and the person who did not deserve to be his big brother, was actually the famous Prince Qin of the human world. The entire Li family was shrouded in a haze, and everyone's faces were deathly pale. Their hearts were filled with fear and despair, and their bodies trembled. If there was a faction that Prince Qin wanted to destroy the most, the Li family would definitely be ranked first. After all, for everything that the Li family had done to Zhao Fu would definitely take revenge 10 times over. Originally, Li Zhe had abandoned Zhao Fu and his mother because of Zhao Fu's mother. He did not want to get involved in this matter, and he just wanted to live a good life. However, the Li family's old patriarch had directly ordered Zhao Fu to be killed, showing no mercy at all. Moreover, after the first assassination had failed, he had tried to assassinate Zhao Fu a second time. This hatred could not be reconciled, and Zhao Fu would take revenge for both the new and the old. All of the Li family's people would die. The Li family would also be destroyed, and even Great Tang would disappear at his hands. After receiving emergency treatment, the Li family's old patriarch's face recovered a bit of color, but it was still quite unsightly. He gathered everyone to discuss this matter. Now, as the Li family's illegitimate child, he had become Prince Qin. This person, who the Li family had looked down on and viewed as a laughingstock and someone who could be killed at any time, had actually achieved so much. He felt a bone-deep hatred towards the Li family. If this matter was not dealt with properly, not only would all of the Li family's people die, but they would also die miserably. After all, the Li family's people he hated the most were the Li family's people. No matter how powerful his enemies were, they could not give Zhao Fu more hatred than the Li family. After everyone gathered together, the Li family's old patriarch sighed and said, "What should we do now? Are we just going to watch as Great Tang is destroyed by this illegitimate child?" An old woman looked at the Li family's old patriarch and said somewhat reproachfully, "Back then, I told you to control your son, and you said that men should be more dissolute. You said that as your son, he should be like this. If you had controlled him properly, this wouldn't have happened. Also, back then, I also told you to take in that mother and son. With the Li family's wealth, taking in those two people would only be a drop in the bucket, yet you said that you couldn't keep them. That would be a humiliation to your family. Now that that child has such power, if he could work for the Li family, just think about how wonderful that would be. At that time, it wouldn't be Qin sweeping across the world, but Great Tang unifying the world. It would be the Great Tang that would make people fear it. Without him, how could Qin have such terrifying power? It was you who gave such a shocking person to the Ying family, and I don't know how lucky the Ying family was to obtain such a world-shaking person." Hearing this, the Li family's old patriarch felt incredibly regretful. If he had taken in the mother and son back then, Great Tang would have been in a completely different situation. It really might have been Great Tang unifying the world, not Qin. His most promising grandson, the most outstanding person in the Li family, had become dim in front of this person. If he had been able to come out, things would not have turned out like this. However, there was no turning back now, and the Li family's old patriarch felt quite resentful. If he had been a bit more ruthless and killed the mother and son from the start, this would not have happened, and the Li family would not have faced such a calamity. Sitting next to him, Li Baiqing felt quite uncomfortable because reality had proven that he could not compare to Zhao Fu. His half-brother, Prince Qin, had always made him feel fear, and he knew that he would never be able to surpass Prince Qin in his lifetime. He couldn't even compare to a single finger of Prince Qin. When he thought of that, Li Baiqing's expression became quite unsightly. Sitting next to him was an extremely beautiful, seductive, and noble woman. She stretched out her hand and held Li Baiqing's cold hand as she gave him a gentle smile and comforted him, saying, "Baiqing, I believe that you're the most outstanding person in the world. I don't like Great Qin's legatee. I only like you, that's why I chose you." Chapter 956. Facing his lover's consolation, Li Baiqing felt a warmth in his heart and forced a smile as he said, I'll work hard and won't lose to him." Next to him, a beautiful and gentle-looking woman could not help but cry. She was Li Zhe's wife, Zhang Shuyun, and she came from a large family. She felt quite guilty and said, if she could accept that mother and son, this wouldn't have happened. If she hadn't married Li Zhe, perhaps that Qin's legatee would have been Great Tang's legatee. Li Zhe was Zhao Fu's father, and seeing his wife cry out of guilt, his heart ached. He truly loved this wife, and even though they were dissolute, he had always treated Zhang Shuyun as his only wife, and no one could replace her. Li Zhe held Zhang Shuyun in his arms and comforted her in a warm voice, "Honey, it's not because of you. Even without you, I wouldn't have fallen for that bitch. How could that bitch compare to you?" Zhang Shuyun's eyes were completely red, and her heart was filled with sweetness as she lightly hugged Li. Seeing the two of them acting so intimately, the Li family's old master immediately scolded loudly, "Why do I have such a stupid son like you? What time is it now, and you're still only thinking about women? Do you want to watch that unfilial son of yours destroy the entire Li family?" Facing the Li family's old patriarchs yelling, Zhang Shuyun let go of Li Zhe and lowered her head. Li Zhe said somewhat angrily, "How could I have thought that bastard would have such accomplishments? If I had killed him long ago, I'll go to Qin's legatee and have him come to the Li family to kowtow and apologize. I'm his father, and if that bastard dares to disobey me, I'll kill him on the spot." Hearing such stupid words, the Li family's old patriarch was so angry that his face turned red as he roared, "If that unfilial son can kill you and let the Li family off, I definitely won't hesitate to send you to him. Get the hell out of here right now." Li Zhe also cried out in dissatisfaction, I'm his father and he's my son. I can do whatever I want him to do. Does he dare to kill me? Even if I gave him 100 guts, he wouldn't dare to do so. Now that he dares to treat the Lee family like this, I'll go and break his legs myself." With that, Leisure really stood up and stormed out of the room in anger. The Lee family's old patriarch pointed at Leisure, so angry that he couldn't speak. How could there be such an idiot? How could he have given birth to two imperial princes? One was the Great Tang's legatee, and the other was Qin's legatee. Li Baiqing sighed at his father and ordered people to stop him. Great Qin's legatee was famous for being ruthless and cold-blooded, and even though Li Baiqing's father was his own father, with how much hatred he had for him, it was possible that he really would kill his father. Even if Li Jie went, nothing would change. His death would be in vain, and it might even deepen the conflict between him and the Li clan. What should I do now? Back then, he hadn't known that he was Qin's imperial prince, but now that he knew, he had to do something. Otherwise, if this continued, Qin had already conquered half of the continent, and it seemed that he would lose the other half as well. Everyone understood this, so they all looked at the Li family's old patriarch. After all, he was the master of the family and everything was up to him. Facing everyone's gazes, the Li family's old patriarch could only sigh and say in an aged voice, "Right now, we can only do everything we can to express our apologies and acknowledge his mother's position in the Li family. We will also officially list Zhao Fu as a descendant of the Li family, hoping that this will ease the relationship between them." Also, the Li family's old patriarch paused and looked at Li Jie as he said, "The most important thing is you have to express your regret. Only then will it be possible to ease the relationship between them." However, Li Jie retorted discontentedly, "I won't acknowledge that unfilial son, nor will I accept that woman. I didn't do anything wrong." Hearing this, the Li family's old patriarch looked at Li Jie coldly, causing Li Jie to feel a chill run down his spine. He was familiar with his father, and he knew that the Li family's old patriarch was going to do this to him. Following this, the entire world was sent into an uproar. No one had thought that legatee Qin and the Li family would have such a relationship. They also felt sorry for the Li family. They had given such a shocking person to someone else. If they had kept legatee Qin in the Li family, he would have definitely become the legatee of Great Tang, and Great Tang might have unified the world. It was a pity that fate made fools of people. More importantly, the Li family had not killed legatee Qin in the end. With legatee Qin's immense power, the entire Li family would have suffered. Now, almost everyone who was smart understood that it was best not to have any contact with the Li family, or else they would not even know how they died. At most, they only had ordinary enmity with Qin, but they had great enmity with the Li family. Immediately, all of the factions treated Great Tang coldly, which made the Li family feel very embarrassed. However, there was nothing they could do about it. They could only hope that the relationship between legatee Qin and them would improve. Not only would they receive better treatment, but they might also not be destroyed, and they might even be able to establish Great Tang with Qin's help. After all, legatee Qin was a member of the Li family, and he still had the Li family's royal bloodline. This was something that could not be changed. Zhao Fu sat in the main hall expressionlessly. The atmosphere was quite oppressive, and no one dared to breathe loudly. There were more than 20 people kneeling in front of the main hall. One of them was a messenger sent by Great Tang, and the other 20 were top beauties chosen by Great Tang. The Great Tang messenger knelt on the ground and said nervously, "Your Majesty Qin, this is a small gift from the Li family. The Li family's old patriarch, your father, and your little brother have each sent a letter to your Majesty, expressing their remorse and apology. Your father has also written a letter in blood, hoping to obtain your Majesty's forgiveness." These words caused the temperature in the main hall to plummet. This was a taboo topic in Zhao Fu's heart, and no one dared to mention it. Even Li Si, who had obtained all of Zhao Fu's information, did not dare to say a single word, as even he could be heavily punished. Under this formless emperor's aura, the great Tang messenger's body felt cold, and he could not help but tremble. However, he gritted his teeth and endured, as he had come with the resolve to die. The main hall was deathly silent, and no one made a sound. Zhao Fu coldly looked at the great Tang messenger, not saying anything for a long time. Chapter 957. Hearing how resolute Zhao Fu was, the great Tang ambassador thought of his goal and mustered up his courage as he raised his head and yelled, "Your Majesty, they are your family. This is a blood relationship that you cannot change. Also, the Li family knows its wrongs and hopes that you can forgive them. As long as you are willing to forgive the Li family, we will do anything. We have no relationship with the Li family at all. I told you to take these things and scram. Did you not hear me? Do you really want we to kill you?" Zhao Fu said furiously, giving off a wave of killing intent. All of the ministers felt a chill and understood that their Majesty was truly angry. They could not help but feel nervous because they understood Zhao Fu's personality. If he was truly angry, he would do anything. At that moment, a pair of guards hurried in and grabbed the great Tang ambassador. The great Tang ambassador struggled as he yelled, "Your Majesty, regardless of whether you admit it or not, you are still a descendant of the Li family. Could it be that you would kill your ancestors, your brothers, and your father? You are the emperor of the great Qin. Are you not afraid of being laughed at by the world?" Bang! A muffled explosion sounded out, and before the great Tang ambassador could finish speaking, a massive formless energy caused his head to explode. Blood and brains splattered everywhere, splattering all of the people around him, causing everyone to feel terror. Zhao Fu sat on the throne with a furious look on his face as he walked out of the palace with his hands behind his back. The guards took back all of the things that the Li family had sent, and they did not want any treasures or women, including the great Tang ambassador's corpse. Because Zhao Fu had left, the ministers felt quite nervous and fearful, and they could only disperse. Li Si hurriedly found Wu Qingyang and Nu Lu and said, "Imperial concubines, His Majesty is truly angry this time. This is the first time this lowly official has seen His Majesty like this, and it might have something to do with His Majesty's past. Imperial concubines are His Majesty's most beloved people, so please help His Majesty. Right now, His Majesty cannot let such a small matter affect his health." Hearing this, Wu Qingyang and Nu Lu felt quite startled, and they understood that it was rare for Zhao Fu to be so angry. Nu Lu looked quite worried. She did not know what Zhao Fu had gone through since he was young. Wu Qingyang nodded in understanding. Ever since she had come into contact with Zhao Fu, she had investigated Zhao Fu and knew that Zhao Fu's past wasn't very pleasant. Wu Qingyang smiled and said a few words in Nu Lu's ear, causing Nu Lu's face to become red. She looked at Wu Qingyang and said, "Qingyang, is this really okay?" Wu Qingyang lightly harumphed and said confidently, "He'll definitely be able to do it. That guy has a bit of an Oedipus complex, and when he was young, he and his mother depended on each other. However, his mother passed away early, so he was left all alone. It's only now that he's developed such a special hobby. Nu Lu, as Nuwa's descendant, you have the aura of a mother of the world, and no one can compare to you. As such, you'll definitely be able to do it. Also, don't you feel that every day, that fellow puts in more effort into you than I do? I'm so angry." Hearing this, Nu Lu's face became red as she embarrassedly nodded. She then changed into a set of extremely seductive clothes. However, they could not find Zhao Fu in the palace, and they found that Zhao Fu had long since left for the southern continent. There was news that the fish-scale world might rebel, and the situation was quite urgent. As such, Zhao Fu had immediately gone there. It had only been a few days since the human world had entered the Heaven Awakened world, and the neighboring fish-scale world had definitely discovered such a big thing. After all, there was a massive rift between the two worlds, and a large-scale invasion was something that could be done. Now that the human world had all entered the heaven-awakened world with their real bodies, they would die a true death. However, the fish-scale world had not done so yet, so they would not die a true death. If they started to fight, the human world would be at a great disadvantage. Zhao Fu did not care about the human world's stability or the southern continent's safety. Rather, this could threaten Qin, so Zhao Fu had to personally go and make sure. Following this, the Li family's gifts and women were all rejected by Qin, causing the Ying family's expressions to become quite unsightly. In order to mediate, the Li family had put in a lot of effort. Even though Qin had all sorts of treasures and wealth, the Li family had also given him some. They knew that he liked beautiful women, so they had picked 20 or so of the most beautiful women in Great Tang. What was important was the letters that the three of them had written. They had been written after much thought and were filled with regret and apology. Their tone was incredibly humble, and their words were incredibly sincere. The most special thing was Li Zhe's blood letter. It had been written in Li Zhe's blood, but Li Zhe had refused no matter what. He had said that he would not suffer such humiliation to beg a bastard child, and it was Zhao Fu who had begged him. Only if Zhao Fu knelt in front of him would he be willing to acknowledge Zhao Fu. The old man of the Li family was so angry that he ordered his men to hold Li Zhe down. Then, he let out some of Li Zhe's blood and asked someone to write a letter for him. Then, he sent it to Qin to show his sincerity. Because blood had bloodline aura, it could be easily sensed. Therefore, Li Zhe's blood had to be used. Otherwise, other people's blood could be used as a substitute. After doing all this, the Li family had really put in a lot of effort and sincerity, hoping that the relationship between the Li family and Zhao Fu could be eased. Of course, this was based on the fact that Qin was too powerful, and the Li family was no match for him. If Zhao Fu was weak and they were very powerful, they would definitely choose to kill him. The assassination of Zhao Fu was a good proof. However, facing their efforts and sincerity, Zhao Fu could not care less and had even killed Great Tang's ambassador. His attitude was so resolute that the Li family's people felt a chill in their hearts, and they understood that there was no room for reconciliation. What should they do now? Now that Qin was so powerful, even if so many people joined hands, they would not be a match for him. They could only stall for a while. In the end, all of Great Tang's factions would be destroyed, and the Li family would not be able to resist. After thinking for a long time, the old man of the Li family could only continue to express goodwill. He first ordered people to collect all of Prince Qin's likes and dislikes. Then, he locked Li Zhe up and told him to reflect on his actions. He guessed that Zhao Fu hated him the most. If he knelt in front of Zhao Fu and cried and begged him, there might be a chance for things to turn around. Facing the old man of the Li family's decision, Li Zhe naturally did not agree. Li Baiqing could not stand it and tried to persuade him, but the old man's attitude was very firm. After all, the legacy of Great Tang was the most important. Now, if the legacy of Great Tang was not destroyed, the old man of the Li family would probably kill Li Zhe. After all, the legacy of his ancestors could not be in his hands. Chapter 958. Zhao Fu teleported to the southern continent and went to the massive rift before entering the fish-scale world. The fish-scale world was currently mobilizing a large number of soldiers, and the sounds of battle could be heard. There was an aura of war everywhere, and it seemed as if they were about to invade. Even though the southern continent was an enemy of Qin, its destruction was not necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, if they could get rid of it, the pressure on Qin would be greatly reduced. However, would the fish-scale world stop after attacking the southern continent? That was not very likely, so they would invade the entire human world. When that time came, Qin would not just be facing a continent but an entire world, and the pressure would be even greater. Zhao Fu wanted to stop the fish-scale world's invasion, and now was the best time. After all, after the fish-scale world conquered the southern continent, it would be incredibly difficult to chase them out. Even though Qin's faction was powerful, it was not powerful enough to fight against an entire world. If they fought and the fish-scale world had the advantage of not dying, the human world would be at a great disadvantage. Because of their true bodies, players' battle intent was not as strong as before. The situation was quite difficult to resolve because Zhao Fu was not as strong as he wanted to be. It would be quite difficult for Zhao Fu to fight against an entire world by himself, so could he continue to ally with others to defend the human world? That would not do either. After all, Zhao Fu did not want to ally with those people. They had just been enemies, but if he did not ally with them, they would be too weak. He was stuck between a rock and a hard place. After thinking about it for a while, he could not think of any good ideas. Could it be that he had to ally with them for the sake of mutual benefits? Thinking about that, Zhao Fu could not help but sigh. He decided to first obtain accurate information. In the fish-scale world, Zhao Fu had used the system faction that he had nurtured from before to set up a rough intelligence network. Even though he could not obtain some secret information, it was not a problem for him to obtain some basic information. This invasion was led by many player factions, as even an idiot would understand that this was the best time to attack. There was already enmity between the two worlds, and it was impossible for them to survive. If they did not take advantage of the fact that they would not die to destroy the human world, they would definitely regret it. The fish-scale world now had 18 billion or so players, which was more than double the number of players in the past. Even though it was impossible for all of them to move out, there were at least 10 billion or so players. Even though Qin now had 8 billion or so people and 800 million soldiers, Zhao Fu could not use all of them to deal with the fish-scale people. The price was too great, and Qin still had many enemies, so he could not focus all of his forces on just one. Moreover, some fish-scale system factions would also participate, so it was impossible to estimate the exact number of battles. Thinking about it, Qin's power was quite weak in front of an entire world. However, Zhao Fu did not like allying with those people. After all, Akhenaten and some other people had participated in destroying Great Qin, so how could they ally with him? Zhao Fu simply could not repay evil with good. However, even if the fish-scale people attacked, the one who was most worried was not Zhao Fu but the entire southern continent. If it was not for the fact that they also threatened Qin, Zhao Fu could not be bothered to do anything. Zhao Fu decided to put this matter aside for now. There was no need for him to take the initiative to do anything. Perhaps after the southern continent was conquered, those people would ask him to work with them instead of him going to find them. After making this decision, Zhao Fu put this matter aside and went to the system faction that the Dark Water continent controlled. This place was developing quite well, and system factions continuously joined. Now there were 2,800 cities, 2,400 city lords controlled by brain bugs, and 400 city lords who were not. Moreover, because they had been clearing out regions and constructing the Great Wall, they had only cleared out half of the regions, which were 300 or so regions. The population had greatly increased, and there were now 2 billion people and 300 million soldiers. With such a powerful faction, it was naturally the largest faction in the Dark Water continent. As such, it was viewed with enmity by countless player factions and some system factions. Compared to the crisis in the southern continent, Zhao Fu was more worried about the Dark Water continent's situation. This was because the faction was developing too quickly, and others wanted to ally together to attack the faction that Zhao Fu had nurtured. It was not good for a faction to be too powerful. This forced Zhao Fu to change his plans and slow down his expansion, and he showed a friendly attitude. It was not that Zhao Fu was afraid of them but that he had too many things to do. Now, this faction had 2,800 cities, and they only took up 20% of the Dark Water continent. Zhao Fu would only deal with them after he became stronger or had time. Perhaps it was because they were going to invade the human world, but they were not very focused. Seeing how friendly Zhao Fu was, they stopped their expansion and temporarily stopped attacking Zhao Fu's faction. They were quite surprised because they had just wanted to ally together to deal with Zhao Fu's faction. Before they had done anything, Zhao Fu's faction had acted in such a tactful manner. Now that they knew they had made a mistake and stopped expanding, they would not be able to attack. If they did not pose a greater threat, they would have fewer people to ally with. Whether or not they would be able to destroy Zhao Fu's faction was not certain, as everyone only cared about what was good for them. After taking care of these matters, Zhao Fu returned to Qin City. He was not in a hurry to act, and he would wait for others to beg Qin City for help. Perhaps Qin City would use some method to deal with the fish scale people by himself. He first had to discuss with his subordinate. This time, he did not receive any news from Yu Xian. Ever since the last battle, Yu Xian had returned to where he was to recover from his injuries, and there had been no news from him. He had not participated in this invasion either, and Zhao Fu had no idea why. Based on the constitution of a world protector's body, his injuries should have healed by now. After all, Mo Qi, who had also been injured, had long since appeared, and he had fought with Zhao Fu over the primogenitor statue. That time, Zhao Fu had activated 3 Emperor Stars, and his injuries had been even more severe. He had almost been on the verge of death, and his injuries would be very difficult to recover from. After all, he had been corroded by 3 Emperor Stars' power, and it would take even longer for him to recover than before. As such, Zhao Fu was not worried at all about the Dark Demon world. Right now, he was only worried about Yu Xian. If the others were easy to deal with, Yu Xian would be the biggest problem. Facing the fish scale world's invasion, Qin City had to prepare for 2 things. One was to take the initiative to attack, and the other was to construct powerful defenses. Chapter 959. Of course, Zhao Fu was not the only one who had sensed the fish scale world's invasion. Others had also sensed it, and one of them was the most powerful and prestigious person in the southern continent, Akhenaten. If the fish scale world invaded now, it would undoubtedly deal a heavy blow to the human world. After all, when both sides' strength was about the same, the other side would not truly die, while the human side would definitely die. This was not a fair battle, and it was a battle that the human side would definitely lose. Moreover, now that they would truly die, most players were incredibly cowardly and did not dare to directly enter the battlefield. As such, they could not count on them to be of much use. Perhaps they had some things that could allow people to bring their bodies into the real world, but they could not bring a large number of their bodies into the real world. As such, they were even more panicked than Qin, and if they continued to fight, they would not have much of a chance of winning. Since the other side was invading, Akhenaten could not stop them by himself, so he naturally had to ally with others. Last time, when the rift had opened, all of the legatees had gathered together to discuss how to deal with the fish scale world. Everyone had contributed, and with their combined strength, they had been able to repel the fish scale world. However, this time they did not know what the situation would be like. The relationship between the 2 sides had long since fallen apart, and there was not much to be said. Right now, the legatees were split into 3 factions. The evil side, Zhao Fu was on the righteous side, C.G. Akhenaten, Oleg, Babylon, and Ramus were on the neutral side, and Tina Pendragon, Jeffrey, and Masanori Hanno were on the neutral side. All of this was because of Zhao Fu. Qin was too great of a threat, causing the relationship between the 2 sides to fall apart. Now that Akhenaten's news had spread, everyone in the world knew that the fish scale world was going to invade again. He thickened his face and sent a letter to all of the legatees, including Zhao Fu. Even though the fish scale world had invaded the southern continent first, The fish-scale world was destroying the human world. The entire world was the fish-scale world's enemy, and the entire human world was in danger. Even if the southern continent was the first to suffer, other places would not have it easy either. Akhenaten didn't believe that they wouldn't come, because he wasn't the only one in danger. If they couldn't hold on, everyone would die together. Just a few days ago, all of the humans had transformed into their true bodies, and the situation had been quite chaotic. Now, something had happened, and everyone's expressions were quite grim. Last time, when they had defended against the invasion, hundreds of millions of people had died. Back then, they did not have to die true deaths, but this was no laughing matter. If they did not go, the world might be destroyed by the fish-scale world, and they might all die. However, if they went, they might also die. After all, this was a battle between worlds, and corpses would be strewn everywhere. The number of deaths was simply uncountable, and they might be one of them. Ordinary people felt terrified and helpless, and they could only wait and see what the higher-ups would do. Last time, it was under their leadership that they had been able to stop the fish-scale people's attack. More accurately speaking, they had defeated the fish-scale people, causing 3 billion fish-scale people to die. At the same time, the various legatees also received letters from Akhenaten. Within an exquisite, white palace, Tina Pendragon sat at her desk and looked at the contents of the letter with a serious expression. As the second person to establish a kingdom, Tina Pendragon understood how powerful a kingdom was. She was the second most powerful kingdom in the human world. A world invasion was something that no one could avoid, as it would destroy an entire world. Luckily, they had the Poison Islands and the Rift as strongholds, but once they lost their effectiveness and the southern continent was conquered, the human world would be in danger. After conquering the southern continent, the fish-scale world would be able to provide them with an endless supply of soldiers. It would be incredibly difficult to chase them out, and more importantly, they would attack other continents. "Gather the army." Tina Pendragon gave the order in a pleasant voice, and the 12 armored knights around her obeyed. They walked out with austere expressions and gathered the army. Tina Pendragon definitely had to go this time because she understood that only by allying together would they be able to resist the fish-scale people's invasion. Over at Jeffrey looked at the letter with a serious expression. The fish-scale world was serious this time, and their invasion might be many times stronger than before. If they could not defend, the human world might fall at the hands of the fish-scale people. "Holy Sun, what should we do?" A white-robed woman with linen hair and a pure and beautiful aura asked Jeffrey. Jeffrey nodded and said, "We definitely have to go. This is not just a matter for the southern continent but the entire human world. No one can avoid this, and our northern continent is facing the even more terrifying demon race. Once the heavenly domain boundary disappears, we'll need reinforcements from other continents." Jeffrey also gave the order to gather the army and convince the other factions to go as well to defend against the fish-scale people's invasion. After reading the contents of the letter, Ramus from the Eastern Archipelago felt quite hesitant, but he still decided to go. He also brought some soldiers and convinced the other factions to go as well, as the fish-scale people would be under great pressure this time. It was not just the legatees from the eastern, western, and western regions who responded as well. Under the immense pressure from the fish-scale people, they could only come, or else they would be destroyed by the fish-scale people. Most people's morale was rather low. Apart from a few elite troops who still maintained fearless, resolute, and stern expressions, the rest of the people's faces were pale and dejected, expressing their fear of the impending invasion. Finally, there was the central continent. As the central continent, it was quite big and had more fate. The factions there were also more powerful, and it had given birth to monsters like Qin. Babylon, CG, Masanori Hanno, Oleg, and Zhao Fu all belonged to the central continent. Masanori Hanno was one of the legatees, but she was now one of Qin's people, so she naturally did not receive the letter. The other 3 people looked about the same when they received the letter, and they all looked towards Qin's direction. The situation in the central continent was incredibly tense, and it was not something they could call the shots. Almost all of the factions had allied together to resist Qin, and they were just barely able to resist. If they withdrew their forces and Qin attacked, the remaining people would not be able to stop Qin Zhao at all. When that time came, Qin would unify the central continent. Since Zhao Fu did not say anything, they naturally did not dare to either, as they could all be destroyed by Qin. Chapter 960. By now, Zhao Fu decided not to go to the southern continent to defend against the fish-scale people because he had a better plan. If those people could defend against the fish-scale people, it would be because of their strength, and if they could not, it would be because of their lives. As such, Zhao Fu decided not to participate in this alliance. After making this decision, Zhao Fu ordered Qin's generals to make preparations. Of course, he did not say anything to the outside world. At that moment, the various factions gathered at the southern continent. They politely and humbly greeted each other before starting to discuss this matter. However, what they did not expect was that not a single person from the Midland continent had come. This caused everyone's expressions to become quite unsightly. After all, the factions in the Midland continent were much more powerful than ordinary continents, and there were many of them. They would be of great help in defending against the fish-scale people's invasion, yet not a single person had come. How could they feel good about this? Even the most important person in this battle, Qin's legatee, had not come. For a world war like this to not have a world protector come, this was quite inexcusable. At the end of the last battle, Zhao Fu had been incredibly useful, refining a massive amount of poison and killing 3 billion or so fish-scale people. No one could replace his contributions, and he was undoubtedly the greatest contributor to the last battle. However, this time, the fish-scale people had ferociously invaded, and Great Qin's legatee, an important figure, had not come. This caused countless people's expressions to become incredibly unsightly, and their hearts sank to rock bottom. They felt that they had already lost this battle before it had even been fought. If even the most powerful person in the Midland continent did not come, how could anyone else in the Midland continent come because of the threat of Qin's legatee? Seeing that Zhao Fu was not willing to come, not only did Geoffrey, Akhenaten, and the other legatees' expressions become quite grim, but even the confident and courageous Tina Pendragon, who had established a kingdom and was the second most powerful person in the world, felt quite uneasy. This was because Qin's legatee's role on the battlefield was irreplaceable. Even if he did not do anything, just tying down the other side's world protector would be quite useful. Fighting a war was not a game, and Tina Pendragon was not an idiot. She deeply understood how important Qin's legatee was. What do we do now? Even Emperor Qin isn't coming. How are we supposed to defend against the fish-scale people's invasion? Someone cried out in panic. Yeah. How can we defend against so many fish-scale people? I don't believe we'll just die for nothing. How about we surrender and submit to the fish-scale world? Another person cried out in fear. I also feel that we won't be able to hold on. Even Prince Qin, the strongest expert in the human world, isn't here. I really don't have any confidence, someone said with a trembling voice. Hearing that Crown Prince Qin wouldn't be coming, the scene became noisy, and screams of fear rang out. Although Crown Prince Qin was the most terrifying person in the human world and countless people were afraid of him, in the current situation, having him deal with the enemy undoubtedly gave them a lot of confidence. Seeing that such a thing had happened just because Crown Prince Qin wasn't coming, everyone's morale was at rock bottom. Akhenaten felt quite uncomfortable, but he understood what Zhao Fu wanted. He did not want to work together with them anymore, as they had tried to kill him many times already. It was just that they had not succeeded, and now that they had fallen out with each other, there was no longer any face to speak of. Following this, the various factions in the Midland continent sent over a letter, saying that they wanted to come and help defend against the fish scale people's invasion. However, Crown Prince Cheen was too selfish and was not willing to come, making it impossible for them to come as well. Now they did not dare to take a step out of the Midland continent, as Cheen could attack them at any moment. As such, they could only apologize. The person who sent the letter did not show it to anyone but instead yelled it out, seeming righteous and hot-blooded, but unable to do anything. Moreover, he talked about the enmity between them, beautifying their vile actions against Zhao Fu and making Zhao Fu's cruelty and selfishness look bad. This perfectly set the tone, and people immediately started to curse. That Crown Prince Cheen really doesn't know what's good for him. Can't he just let go of his personal enmity in front of a powerful enemy? Can't he just stay outside? This kind of person is disgusting. I'm going to die from anger. That Crown Prince Cheen is too selfish and only thinks about himself. He doesn't care about anyone else's life or death. How could our human world have such a world protector? We're all blind. That's right. Can't that Crown Prince Cheen be a bit more magnanimous? The human world is facing such a great crisis, and he only cares about himself. Not only is he not coming to help, but he's even dragging others along. This kind of person is worse than an animal. To be honest, I can't help but say this. Great Cheen's legatee should give up on his personal grievances and put the human race first. He needs to live up to his identity and not be a despicable and vile person. Almost everyone stood on CG's side. CG's vicious plan had once again succeeded, which was to vilify Crown Prince Cheen. In the future, the more people who did not submit to him, the more intense the resistance would be. Those who won the hearts of the people would win the world. This was to make Crown Prince Cheen lose the hearts of the people. This was because no matter what they did to Cheen, others would completely forget that they were doing what was right and righteous. Moreover, this was under the circumstances that they did not have to use a single soldier. Back then, Zhao Fu had been the greatest contributor to stopping the fish-scale world, but what had happened in the end? He had been attacked by countless city lords, and there were even 2 world protectors who had almost killed Zhao Fu. If Zhao Fu really did not have any sense of righteousness, how could he have gone to stop the fish-scale world's invasion? Back then, he had selflessly told them the information he had obtained from the Dark Demon world and fish-scale world. Now Zhao Fu was being called a selfish person. Moreover, it was clear that if they had Cheen's crown prince, their battle strength would greatly increase. He would be their greatest support, and the pressure on them from stopping the fish-scale world would be greatly reduced. However, by saying this, they had completely cut off the possibility of Zhao Fu coming. If they went to beg Zhao Fu, it might be possible for Zhao Fu to come back. However, if they insulted Zhao Fu like this, would he come? Chapter 961. Alright, everyone calm down. Since the Midland Continent's people are not willing to come, our main task is to defend against the fish-scale world's invasion, Akhenaten said as he looked at the scene becoming more and more rowdy. Only then did everyone calm down. Thinking about how they still had to face the fish-scale world, their expressions became quite grim, and the scene once again fell silent. Only then did everyone calm down. Thinking about how they still had to face the fish-scale world, their expressions became quite grim, and the scene once again fell silent. Looking at these people, Akhenaten could not help but sigh. He did not have much confidence in relying on these people to defend against the fish-scale world's invasion. Over at the other legatees, they were the main force. This was especially so for Tina Pendragon, who had already established a kingdom. That was the human world's second kingdom, and it had the power of a true kingdom. It was not something that ordinary factions could resist. What should we do now? We have the massive poison island as our defense, which gives us a massive advantage. However, since the fish-scale world dared to invade, they definitely have a plan, Akhenaten said as he looked at everyone. However, they did not have any good ideas, so they could only choose to defend in case anything unexpected happened. They did not know what the fish-scale world was going to do. The people present were the elites and strategists of the 4 continents, and they started to make preparations to destroy the poison island and release the poison water. The poison island was now hundreds of regions wide, and the player factions had brought 2 billion people. The southern continent's system faction also had 2 billion soldiers, and all of them were Stage 1 soldiers. Moreover, 20,000 or so city lords had also moved out. They had no other choice. If it wasn't for the fact that they might all die together or that they could deal with the fish-scale world on their own, they would not have worked together with the players. 1 week later, under the deep blue sky, there were a few clouds and the weather was clear and sunny. 4 billion people were stationed on the poison island, which was hundreds of regions wide, forming a grand defensive line. The fish-scale world's various factions were also making preparations as they slowly advanced towards the poison island. The 2 armies officially clashed, and the armies gave off boundless auras as they faced off against each other, causing the surroundings to feel quite oppressive. Under the pressure of the 2 armies, the fish and water monsters in the surroundings had long since escaped. The 2 city lords stood in the sky. Because Akhenaten was the most powerful faction in the southern continent and the legatee of the most powerful dynasty, he was temporarily in charge. At that moment, Akhenaten called out as courteously as he could, "Fish-scale people, our human world has no intentions of invading your fish-scale world. You live in the water while we live on land. If we go underwater, we won't be able to survive. You can rest assured. You don't like living on land either. There's really no need for this war. Both sides will suffer great losses, so we can sign a peace treaty to maintain the peace between the 2 worlds. In fact, we can even work together at times because our common enemy should be the previous world." The fish-scale world had 8 billion people, which was twice as many as the human world. Moreover, almost all of them were players, so if they died, they would not truly die. However, if the human side died, they would truly die. Akhenaten did not want to fight this battle, as it was incredibly disadvantageous, and would not bring him any benefits. If there was a way to reconcile, that would be for the best. The fish-scale players looked at the human world's people mockingly. Now that they had such a great advantage, regardless of whether the human side was a threat or not, destroying them would be the best thing to do, and they would not have to worry about anything in the future. Moreover, they would not truly die, so they could attack as they pleased. However, the other side could not. This was a battle that they would definitely win, so of course they had to fight. Even though they did not like living on land, conquering the human world would bring massive benefits, such as turning countless cities into fish-scale cities. With the power of 2 worlds, why would they be afraid of the previous world? You humans are so weak. Your Emperor Qin didn't come, so let's see how you're going to defend against us. If you submit to our fish-scale world, we can guarantee that you'll all become high-grade slaves." One of the legatees said mockingly. Akhenaten felt quite angry. He had spoken so courteously to the other side, yet they were so condescending. It seemed that this battle was unavoidable. When he thought of that, Akhenaten did not hesitate and gave the order to attack. Whoosh, 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 wooden barrels were tossed out, and they exploded as they landed in the water. Countless foul-smelling venom spread out, dyeing the surface of the water green. This was a poison that the human world had prepared, and not only was it incredibly poisonous, but it could also seep through one's skin. This poison could also quickly spread, and if it was tossed into the fish-scale players, it would be able to kill a large number of them. This was a sudden sneak attack, and it would most likely be quite effective. However, something disappointing happened. Not a single person within the green water was harmed. The fish scale players were quite startled by the human side's sudden attack, but after seeing that it was a poison attack, they could not help but loudly laugh. Last time, they had been defeated by this attack and had paid a massive price. This time, they had specially defended against this attack. Not only did they have poison prevention pearls, but they also had body protection pearls, which prevented the poison from invading their bodies. They also had detoxification pills, which they had long since consumed, which could get rid of the poison in their bodies. These 3 layers of defenses showed how much importance the fish scale people placed on this, and they definitely would not lose to poison again. That was why they did not fear the poison island. The fish scale people did not hesitate to give the order to attack, and the fish scale people charged towards the poison island. It was like a massive flood, giving off an aura that seemed to be able to destroy everything as it crashed towards the human world. Even though they had failed, the human side was not too disappointed. They had guessed that the fish scale people had come prepared, and the first attack was just a test. Even though the fish scale people had the advantage, the human side had a great advantage. First, they were fighting on land, which made the fish scale people's battle power much weaker. Moreover, the various types of soldiers were not as effective on land, such as the 3 cavalrymen. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless wooden barrels were once again tossed out and exploded. The fish scale people thought that it was venom, but what they saw caused their expressions to fall. The barrels were actually filled with white powder, which gave off a bone-chilling coldness as it instantly spread out. The surface of the water froze in an instant, and the people around him were frozen before they could even react. Chapter 962. The first probing attack had caused the fish scale people's side to become careless. This wave of attacks caused large chunks of ice to appear on the surface of the ocean, and the people sealed within the ice were frozen. The icy chi entered their bodies, and it was almost impossible for them to survive. This attack had cost the lives of 400 to 500 million fish scale people. The fish scale people were infuriated, and they prepared to attack the island ahead of time. A row of people walked out, holding spears made of coral. These spears were dark black, and there were blue gems embedded into the spearheads. They gave off a faint blue light and gave off a powerful water attribute energy. These people gripped their spears and vigorously threw them out. The countless spears brought with them terrifying power as they drew arcs in the air and whistled as they landed on the ice island. Bang, bang, bang! Loud explosions rang out as the spear seemed to cause great damage to the ice. When the spear landed on the ice suddenly exploded. The ice continued to crack and collapse, and large holes that were over 100 meters wide appeared. The blue gems embedded into the spears gave off an intense light, causing the ice within the hole to automatically turn into water and form pools of ice. It could be said that this was the exact opposite of how humans attack. Humans turned water into ice, while the fish scale people turned ice into water. The blue gems embedded into the spears could turn ice into water, as water was the fish scale people's home ground. That was where they could unleash their full power. They had wanted to get closer so that they could not only turn ice into water, but they could also attack the humans and heavily injure them. It was a pity that the humans had attacked first. However, the fish scale people had been quite effective this time. They had turned more than half of the ice into water, and with another wave of attacks, they would be able to reach the bottom of the human defensive wall. In fact, they might even be able to destroy the defensive wall. The city lords of both sides started to fight in the sky, unable to interfere with the battle below. The fish scale city lords only had a bit more city lords than the humans, as only a small portion of the system faction was participating. In terms of city lords, the humans would not lose by much. Looking at the ice that had turned into water, the humans' expressions became quite grim. They understood how dangerous this attack was, so they ordered the people to reinforce the ice under the defensive wall and use restrictions to protect it. As the humans fortified their defenses, the fish scale people once again threw out spears, turning the remaining ice into water. Now, the area 5 meters away from the defensive walls was completely covered in water, and the advantage that the humans had on land was gone. The ice crystal powder had also been used up after the first wave of attack. Otherwise, they could have used the ice crystal powder to freeze the water again. Kill! The fish scale people excitedly roared as they rushed towards the defensive walls. Their auras were incredibly majestic, and they were like a tsunami that smashed at everything. At that moment, the humans reacted and once again threw out wooden barrels, causing them to fly towards the fish scale people. The fish scale people once again thought that it was ice powder, so they raised their bows and shot arrows at the fish scale people. Puff, 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 many of the barrels that were thrown were pierced by the arrows, but it was at this moment that a large amount of black liquid flew out and splashed into the water. This black substance did not merge with the water, but floated on the surface of the water. Swish, 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 countless flaming arrows landed on the water, causing massive flames to rise hundreds of meters into the air. The searing heat waves blasted out in all directions, and many fish scale people were devoured by the flames, causing them to howl before being burned to death. The black liquid was naturally kerosene, and the massive flames formed a wall of flames, forcing the charging fish scale people to stop. This sea of flames had burned at least 300 to 400 million fish scale people to death. The fish scale people were once again infuriated, and a large number of fish scale people wearing magic robes and holding magic formations appeared. Those who wore such equipment were generally mages. These fish scale mages raised their magic staffs and chanted strange incantations, causing the magic formations to give off a brilliant blue light. The water seemed to be drawn towards them, forming a 1,000-meter tall wave that gave off a destructive aura. Seeing this wave, the humans were greatly startled and hurriedly tried to think of a way to deal with it. Boom! However, they were not given any time. The 1,000-meter tall wave gave off a terrifying aura as it rushed towards the defensive wall before crashing down, directly inundating the wall of fire that was hundreds of meters tall. Countless waves slammed against the defensive wall with immense force. In fact, some parts of the defensive wall had already been submerged. The defensive wall had countless restrictions on it, making it incredibly tough. However, it still violently trembled and started to crack. Some places were quite low, and the people standing on them were swept off the defensive wall by the seawater. It was impossible to tell how many people had died or been injured. However, it was incredibly difficult for the mages to create such a massive wave, and their faces were incredibly pale. Seeing this, the fish scale people once again ordered the fishman mages to cast a tsunami. Even though the fishman mages' faces were pale, they could still cast another wave. As such, they once again raised their magic staffs and chanted. Rays of blue light spread out as seawater madly gathered towards the sky. On the human side, 5 corps wearing silver armor and giving off ferocious auras quickly gathered at 5 points on the defensive wall. Great corps! They roared as countless traces of silver-white aura gathered at the center of the corps, forming an orb of light that gave off a silver-white light. A powerful aura burst forth, and the other humans also exploded out with their cultivation power. Just as everyone exploded out with their cultivation power, it was as if it was being absorbed by a formless energy. It was the 5 orbs of light that absorbed their cultivation power, and the orbs of light that were dozens of meters wide expanded to 1,000 meters wide. Boom! The 1,000-meter tall wave gave off destructive power as it smashed towards the defensive wall. The 5 corps simultaneously roared as the 5 massive orbs of light shot out and collided with the wave, resulting in a shocking explosion. The massive wave exploded out, causing seawater to fly everywhere before falling back down like a torrential rain. A ferocious shock wave blasted out, and both sides were thrown into chaos by the shock wave. However, the fish scale people were the first to react, and they roared as they charged over. Because the distance between the two sides had decreased, they quickly reached the defensive wall. The human side immediately panicked, and the archers drew their bows and shot arrows at the incoming fish scale people. Chi, chi, chi. Chapter 963. With this fearless charge, they quickly reached the defensive walls. The fish scale archers also arrived, shooting arrows at the humans. Countless arrows whistled through the air, and casualties immediately appeared on the defensive walls. Kill! Because the fish scale people had the advantage in numbers, they roared and started to climb up the defensive walls. The humans continuously counterattacked, using all sorts of attacks against the fish scale people. The battle between the two sides was incredibly intense, and the sound of fighting continuously sounded out. The stench of blood spread out, and there were corpses everywhere. Weapons were scattered everywhere, making it seem like hell on earth. This was the cruelty of war. By now, some fish scale people had already climbed up the defensive walls and started to fight with the humans. Seeing that the fish scale people had already reached the defensive walls, the humans felt incredibly terrified. Their morale had not been very high to begin with, and now it plummeted even more. As their morale fell, their attacks also weakened. Even more fish scale people took this opportunity to climb up the defensive walls and savagely charge at the human soldiers. By now, it was clear that the humans were losing, and Akhenaten did not hesitate to give the order to retreat to the vicinity of the rift. After receiving this order, the humans naturally let out a sigh of relief and quickly retreated. They used teleportation channels that they had long since constructed to retreat to the vicinity of the rift, while the fish scale people ferociously chased after them. Some of the humans who were fast enough naturally reached the vicinity of the rift, while those who were too slow were killed by the fish scale people. Just like that, 600 million people died. There were players and indigenous residents, and their deaths were true death. The human city lords also started to retreat. Because teleportation channels could only be used by the fish scale people, the fish scale people could not use them. As such, they could only stop and construct a large number of teleportation channels to the vicinity of the rift. The area around the rift was where the human world and fish scale world were connected. This could be said to be the human world's final line of defense, and there was a long defensive line. The humans once again defended here, while the fish scale people dared to attack here. This time, the two sides did not face off against each other, and the fish scale people ferociously rushed towards the rift. They gave off powerful auras and were unstoppable like a flood. Seeing how weak the humans were and how they were about to be defeated, the fish scale legatees did not feel too worried, and they arrogantly laughed as they said, "You humans are all shameless wretches. I told you to hurry up and submit, and we could make you high-class slaves. Why did we have to use force to conquer you?" The big man with fangs also wildly laughed as he said to Tina Pendragon, "Beauty, hurry and submit to me. Tonight, I'll let you have a taste of a big stick. You'll fall in love with it. This is something that you humans can't do." "Ha, yes. You humans are a lowly race, and your world isn't as big as ours, so you're destined to be conquered by us. We're your masters." One of the fish scale elders also laughed. "True King's sword." No one replied to them, and Tina Pendragon looked at the big man with fangs in front of her. She was now truly furious. Just then, she had been hiding her power and had not used her full strength. The golden dragon seal within Tina Pendragon's body gave off a blinding golden light. Tina Pendragon raised her sword, and a golden light shot into the sky. A massive storm of sword chi spread out as Tina Pendragon slashed out with her full strength. A terrifying golden sword light slashed towards the big man with fangs. The big man with fangs had never thought that Tina Pendragon would be so powerful. By the time he reacted, it was already too late, and he was sent flying by the massive golden sword light. He crashed into the ice thousands of meters away, smashing open a large crater. His body was covered with blood, and many of his bones had been broken. His body gave off a faint blue light, which was the fish scale world's world energy. In other words, that attack just then had been enough to kill the big man with fangs. It was only because of the world energy that the big man had been able to survive. As a legatee, this was her advantage. Seeing the power that Tina Pendragon had released after breaking through, the other legatees felt quite shocked. They understood that she was now a true king. Akhenaten did not try to hide anything and loudly laughed as he said, "Your fish-scale people asked for this, so don't blame me." This caused the fish-scale people to feel that something was off. However, seeing that their army was about to break through the human world's defenses, they did not notice anything off. At that moment, a shocking explosion sounded out. A white pillar of cold air rushed into the sky, and the cold air formed an icy mist that covered the entire sky. A bone-chilling cold air spread out, but the ice that it covered all began to crack and collapse, as if there was some kind of power that was sucking away the cold air from the ice. The fish-scale people's expressions fell, and they ordered their people to gather together and release all of their power to defend. At that moment, the pillar of icy chi spread out incredibly quickly, sweeping through everything. It was unstoppable, and it was as if the entire world was going to be frozen. This pillar of icy chi came from the island of ice. From the beginning, there had been a massive magic formation on the island of ice, and in order to use it to deal with the fish-scale people, they had made a lot of considerations. The magic formation's purpose was to instantly turn the island of ice into poisonous water and spread it throughout the fish-scale world. However, they had changed the magic formation's purpose to gather countless traces of icy chi. The island of ice covered hundreds of regions, and the icy chi was incredibly terrifying. The countless fish-scale people understood how terrifying the icy chi was, so they gathered together and formed a massive barrier. They had made some preparations. However, that icy chi was simply too terrifying, and as it swept past, the barrier was frozen. The fish-scale people's bodies were frozen, and their lives instantly disappeared. This attack instantly killed 2 billion or so fish-scale people. Of the 7 billion or so fish-scale people, only 5 billion remained, while the humans still had 4 billion. The humans had only lost 600 million humans, while the fish-scale people had lost 3 billion. However, the 3 billion fish-scale people who died would not truly die, but the humans who died would truly die. Logically speaking, this was not worth it. Akhenaten understood this and said loudly, "We humans aren't easy to bully. This isn't our full strength, and we'll be even more powerful in the future. I think we should sit down and have a good talk. Let's focus on peace and not start a war." Talk about peace? Seeing so many fish-scale people die, the legatee at the front looked at Akhenaten hatefully, but he suddenly laughed and said, "You humans have lost this time." Boom! Chapter 964. A massive crack stretched out on the horizon, following which transparent rocks giving off rainbow-colored light fell from the sky and landed in the water, creating countless splashes. A crack that was hundreds of thousands of kilometers wide appeared. This was the second crack, and the humans had never thought that the fish-scale people would have such a trump card. Almost 90% of their forces were gathered here, and they did not have the strength to defend at all. Once they charged into the southern continent, the scene would be unimaginable. The humans' expressions fell as they thought of the consequences. They had fallen for a trap, and they had never thought that the fish-scale people would have two teams. The first team was in charge of attracting the humans' attention, while the second team was the true killing move. Over at the horizon, a little boy with a golden dragon tail was holding a rainbow-colored shard as he happily smiled in front of a young man. "Big bro, look, I've obtained this again." That young man was Yu Xian. This was something that could destroy the human world in one fell swoop, so how could he not participate? At that moment, He clearly understood the threat that the human world posed to him. Wrong, he understood the threat that Great Cheen posed. If they did not get rid of Cheen, the fish-scale world would be destroyed at Cheen's hands one day. The little boy was his little brother, and for some reason, he had obtained the ability to break through the heavenly domain boundary. Last time, he had accidentally broken through the heavenly domain boundary. This ability was naturally incredibly powerful, and according to what Zhao Fu knew, no one had been able to do such a thing yet. However, there was also a flaw, and that was that the crack was not something he could control. In other words, the little boy could break something in the heavenly domain spirit formation, but he did not know where the crack would be. However, there was a way to deal with this. If they destroyed the heavenly domain boundary in the south, there would definitely be cracks in the heavenly domain boundary. As long as they were far away from the first crack, their plan would succeed. His team had 4 billion soldiers, and 70% of them were players and 30% were indigenous residents. There were also many city lords. Looking at the crack, Yu Xian waved his hand, and all of the fish-scale people excitedly roared. They gave off terrifying sounds as they ferociously flooded into the human world. The human world's calamity had officially begun. Hurry and retreat. Go back to the human world and stop that group. Akhenaten yelled out in terror. If this group of fish-scale people charged into the southern continent, with the current situation, the southern continent would definitely be swept through by the fish-scale people. The southern continent would fall, and it would be over for them. If their home was destroyed, there was no point in staying here. However, it was not quite possible for them to retreat and stop the other team. Firstly, they were quite far away, and secondly, there were nearly 5 billion fish-scale people here. How could they let the humans leave? Kill. As long as we can stall this group of humans, we will be victorious. At that time, everyone will have a share of the loot. A legatee loudly laughed as he led the way and rushed out. The other fish-scale people were incredibly excited and ferociously rushed towards the human world. Facing this massive wave of fish-scale people, the humans were unable to retreat in time. Waves of arrows flew into the sky and drew arcs in the air before descending like a torrential rain. The humans could only stop and defend. The fish-scale people took this opportunity to attack the defensive walls and start to fight with the humans. The human side started to retreat because the other group of fish-scale people had already entered the human world. This greatly reduced their morale, and their battle strength greatly decreased. Seeing the fish-scale people climbing up the city walls, they felt quite afraid. It was evident how strong they were. Seeing the fish-scale person jump up, a person looked terrified and nervously gripped his weapon, his body trembling. Seeing this, the fish-scale person wildly laughed and ferociously attacked that person, splitting him in half in just a few strikes. Another fish-scale person gave a sharp laugh and used his spear to pierce through a human's chest. Another tall fish-scale person swung his axe and savagely hacked at the humans, killing them one by one. Blood sprayed everywhere, causing the fish-scale people to feel even more excited. In their eyes, humans were just prey and were not worthy of being their enemies. Humans were simply too weak, not just in terms of mental strength but also in terms of battle power. In a clash between a peaceful world and a world where the strong preyed on the weak, the fish-scale people were clearly superior, while humans were lowly slaves. Arg! Facing the fish-scale people's condescending mockery, a human furiously took out a large saber and hacked a fish-scale person to the ground. However, a few fish-scale people quickly surrounded him and dismembered that human's body in just a few strikes. Following this, the blood-red fish-scale people brandished their weapons and savagely laughed as they rushed at the humans and started to kill them. On the other side, the fish-scale people who had charged into the human world also started to massacre. Indeed, it was a massacre, as they did not have many soldiers left in the cities. The ordinary residents did not have much strength at all. Seeing the fish-scale people arrive, they closed the city gates and vigorously defended the cities. However, facing the 4 billion fish scale soldiers, they were unable to resist at all. The fish scale people easily charged into the cities and killed any humans they saw. A fish scale person rushed in and looked at an elderly man. He wanted to run, but because of his old body, he was not very fast. After running a few steps, the fish scale person savagely laughed and swung his saber, chopping off the elderly man's legs. The elderly man fell to the ground and howled in pain. The fish scale person loudly laughed and chopped off the elderly man's head. Another fish scale person swung his hammer at a group of escaping people, smashing them with all his might. Pained cries continuously sounded out, and a man said that he wanted to surrender in fear. However, the fish scale person smashed his head into a pulp. Another fish scale person rushed into a room because he had heard the sound of a child crying. After rushing in, he saw a woman hugging a 3-year-old child who was crying in fear. Looking at the voluptuous woman, the fish scale person lewdly laughed and went up to snatch the crying child before killing him in annoyance. The woman cried as she leapt at the fish scale person, scratching at his face. However, this did not deal much damage, and the fish scale person savagely laughed as he hugged the woman and pressed her to the ground. He tore off her clothes and started to rape her. A fish scale person took a fancy to a person's golden accessory and rushed up, chopping off that person's arm. The fish scale person ignored that person's cries of pain and picked up the severed arm, took off the golden ring, and then slashed out, killing that person. Chapter 965. There was blood everywhere, as well as countless mangled corpses. There were women who had been raped and killed, and there were children lying in pools of blood. The scene was incredibly cruel and bloody, and it was as terrifying as hell on earth. Because the soldiers and city lords were not present after the fish scale people attacked, the city hall's energy barrier automatically activated, automatically protecting the city. A system main city's energy barrier could defend against the attacks of 10 or so city lords and hundreds of thousands of soldiers. However, if it was attacked by dozens of city lords or millions of soldiers, it would be quite easy to break through. Once the energy barrier was broken, the city would be conquered. On the other side of the battlefield, a human city lord was fighting with a fish-scale city lord. After a city was conquered, the city lord seal's power naturally disappeared. Without the city lord seal's power, he was killed by a fish-scale city lord in a single blow. After the city lords died, the system main city soldiers' morale plummeted, and they no longer had the will to fight. Now that their city lords were dead, their families and friends were being slaughtered. The human side's defeat was irreversible, and as the city lords died, the system main city army was heavily injured, and their strength greatly decreased. This was not only because of the city lords' deaths, but also because of the various stats that the city lords gave them. The fish-scale people seized this opportunity to attack even more ferociously. The human side was naturally even worse off, and it was almost a one-sided defeat. By now, no one had given any orders, and some people had already started to run. Once someone ran, the others would ignore them and focus on running for their lives. This caused the human army to completely collapse, and the fish-scale people continued to madly chase after the human army. On the other side, the 4 billion fish-scale people gave off a ferocious and unstoppable aura as they swept through thousands of regions in the southern continent. Everywhere they went, there was not a single person left alive, and everything of value was taken away. The things that could not be taken away were directly destroyed and burned, leaving nothing for the humans. This caused countless people to feel incredibly furious. The most tragic thing was that there were at least 1 billion residents who were madly slaughtered by the fish-scale people. With so many people dying, the sky seemed to be dyed blood-red, and a sense of sorrow spread out from the southern continent. In the end, Akhenaten and the others were able to retreat, but they had suffered heavy losses. Only 1.2 billion people were able to retreat, and when they had retreated to the rift, they had only had 3.4 billion people left. That meant that another 2 billion people had died. The fish scale people had originally had 5 billion people, but they had only lost 300 million people, and these people would not die true death. In actuality, if the 2 billion people who had died fought to the death, they would have been able to kill at least 1 billion fish scale people. It was a pity that the human side's rear had been broken through, so they were destined to lose this battle. If they could not retreat and stayed here, the entire southern continent would be slaughtered. Even if they stayed here, it would be meaningless because their rear had already been breached. If they stayed here, they would be besieged and killed sooner or later. Moreover, because the fish scale people outnumbered them and did not fear death, they had to retreat. No matter how many losses they suffered, it was better than being completely wiped out. Moreover, the fish scale people had more people than them and were not afraid of death, so they had to retreat. No matter how many losses they suffered, it was better than being completely wiped out. Moreover, because their city lords had been destroyed, the human side's morale and strength had fallen. After hearing about this, everyone's expressions fell, and they looked quite terrified. The southern continent could not resist at all, and it was only a matter of time before it fell. By now, the entire human world was in danger, as the fish scale people had successfully invaded. Once they conquered the southern continent, they would attack the other continent. By now, the southern continent was completely defenseless, and it was only a matter of time before it completely fell. By now, all of humanity was in danger, as the fish scale people had already successfully invaded. After conquering the southern continent, they would attack the other continent. What should we do? Who knows what to do? Everyone in the world felt quite panicked. It was already too late to go to the southern continent, and even if they went, they would not be able to change anything. The fish scale people had already attacked, and if they did not make any preparations, they would definitely fail. The various factions that had gone to the southern continent to defend against the fish scale people had already retreated to their own continent. The ones who were in the worst situation were the southern continent's people. This was their foundation, and they could only move to other continents. The two groups of fish scale people had already met up, and there were still around 8 billion of them. Because they had already conquered the southern continent, the fish scale people who heard about this swarmed over. The human world's southern continent was about to be conquered, and now was the time to split the spoils. Many fish scale people who had not wanted to come before saw that there were massive benefits and there was not much danger, so they did not hesitate to come. Even the system factions that had not wanted to participate in this had never thought that they would be able to invade the human world so easily. Now that they had come, they were quite happy. An even larger group of fish scale people started to invade the human world. Yu Xian did not refuse these people, as it would be quite difficult for them to conquer the human world with 8 billion or so people. However, if they gathered the entire fish scale world's power to invade the human world, it would be much easier. In just a week's time, the southern continent was practically swept through without any obstructions. Almost 90% of the region had been occupied. The southern continent's countless factions had already moved to the eastern, western, and central continent. Even the southern continent's most powerful king, Akhenaten, was no exception. After all, if he stayed, he would definitely die. Now, the number of fish scale people gathered in the southern continent was simply incalculable. The various continents were quite welcoming of the southern continent's countless factions relocating. After all, with the threat of the fish scale world's invasion, having more power meant more protection. If it was under normal circumstances, other factions definitely would not be welcomed. Most people in the southern continent chose to go to the eastern, western, and northern continent. The situation in the central continent was rather tense, and many people did not want to go there. Most of the factions chose the Western continent because the Western continent was the human world's rear. The Northern continent was facing the dark demon world, the Southern continent was facing the fish-scale world, and the Eastern continent was facing the previous world. The Western continent did not face any other world. This was undoubtedly the safest place for humans right now, so more people chose this place. Chapter 966. In actuality, there were 1,500 or 600 city lords in the Midland continent who had joined CG's alliance. CG's side naturally welcomed them, but not a single person chose to join Qin. After all, Qin's scheme had caused Qin to lose popularity. Even though Qin had a powerful advantage, they were still unwilling to come. On one hand, they hated Qin and felt disdain towards Qin's despicable faction. On the other hand, they had already offended Qin, so they did not dare to choose Qin. Some people even pushed this failure onto Qin. If Qin had helped, things would not have turned out like this, and the condemnation towards Qin became even more intense. Countless factions in the southern continent migrated, and most of them were player factions or system cities. They managed to survive, but the villages in the wilderness were not so lucky. These villages were the fish-scale world's second target. They directly rushed into those villages and took whatever they could, as long as it was of some value. Those who resisted were killed, and those who did not resist were made into slaves to see if anyone would buy them. Now that the southern continent was about to be conquered by them, they did not have to rush. They slowly took everything in the southern continent, whether it was resources or people, and brought them all back to the fish-scale world. However, humans could not breathe underwater, so those who bought slaves had to buy items that could allow them to breathe underwater. The fish-scale world's cities not only had water-repellent abilities, but they also had gravity, making it so that people could not swim like in other places. As such, they could only walk. If they could solve the problem of humans breathing, they would be able to survive in the fish-scale world. Breathing equipment was also quite cheap, so the fish-scale world's slave market quickly became popular. A few of the largest slave markets appeared next to the rift. Humans' hands were tied up, and there was a rope around their necks. Some were locked together in wooden cages, looking like livestock. Normally, there were only young men and women, as the elderly and children did not have any value as slaves. As such, they were immediately killed. Almost all of these people did not have any clothes on them, as this allowed customers to see what was being sold. If they wanted something, they could directly pay for it, and they could do whatever they wanted with it. The people who were brought here all had empty eyes and numb expressions. They looked like walking corpses, as they felt despair in their hearts. Pa! A fish-scale person could not bear to see these humans walking so slowly, and he ferociously lashed out with his whip. As the whip struck their bodies, they immediately became red and swollen, and the pain caused them to feel fear, causing them to speed up. Old Luo, you've caught so many humans today, a fish-scale person laughed as he looked at the fish-scale people whipping the humans. The fish-scale person holding the whip had a ferocious look on his face, and he laughed as he replied, I was just lucky and found a group of refugees. Both of them were familiar with each other, so they chatted as usual. It was almost like a normal market, and what was being sold here were also goods, just humans. All of this was quite normal, and none of the fish-scale people were surprised. Even the 100 or so human women being raped by fish-scale people did not have much of a reaction, as if this was an incredibly normal thing to do. This was the true face of the heaven-awakened world. The strong could decide everything. Normally, this was the fate of a world that was conquered by others, and Zhao Fu had long since seen this outside of the Legacy Land. The various continents all started to build defensive structures, as after the fish-scale world devoured the southern continent, they would naturally make a move against them. It could be said that all of the humans had hurriedly gathered to hold a meeting. Now that the human world really might be destroyed, those who did not want to help were forced to join. They did not want to die, and they knew from the reports that the fate of becoming fish scale people's slaves was a fate worse than death. This time, the various factions that were plotting against Qin also arrived. Even though they did not bring many people, all of their leaders had come, such as CG, Oleg, Babylon, Lu Yi, and others. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.